Forget the postcards. Forget the smiling guards in Renaissance cosplay. The Vatican isn't just a city of saints and marble, it's a labyrinth of stone and silence. Beneath the tourists, the bells, and the Latin hymns, something else stirs. It's older than the church. Older than Rome. And it's waiting. You stand at the edge of a narrow stairway, lit only by a single, shivering bulb. The air tastes stale, like wet limestone and forgotten incense. Somewhere above, the echo of distant prayer filters through the floor, a ghostly reminder that life continues, even when you're about to descend into its underbelly. The guard who let you in didn't say much. He just looked at your visitor's pass, grunted, and muttered something that might have been a warning. Maybe it was, "Don't stay long." Maybe it was, "Don't look too hard." Hard to tell over the hum of the Vatican's endless generators, the machines that keep the facade alive. Step by step, you descend. The walls are narrow, slick with condensation. You brush your hand against the stone and feel the grooves, carved not by machines, but by hands. Human hands. Thousands of them. Over centuries. You imagine them, masons, monks, prisoners. The ones who built the church's foundation while others built the myths. Down here, there's no gold. No stained glass. Just the quiet company of bones. The Vatican, after all, is built on a graveyard. The Roman necropolis still sleeps beneath its marble feet, tombs stacked on tombs, layer upon layer of death and devotion. You might call it sacred. The locals just call it old. Congrats. You've made it about 20 meters down. The air's heavier now, the kind that sits in your lungs like guilt. The guidebook doesn't list this part. It doesn't mention the side door that opens into a chamber no tourist ever sees. But you're here now. And you can't help wondering why the Vatican keeps so many doors locked. Now, let's talk about the first secret. It isn't a relic or a relic thief. It's silence. Institutional silence. The kind that wraps itself around the truth and strangles it slowly. Down here, beneath St. Peter's Basilica, there are rooms that don't exist on any blueprint. No signs, no records. Just corridors that curve where they shouldn't, and doors that lead nowhere, or somewhere no one should go. You notice one now. A metal door, half rusted, with Latin scratched faintly into its surface. The letters read, "Non est hic." He is not here. Comforting, isn't it? Inside, there's nothing at first. Just dust, and the faint smell of old paper. Then your flashlight catches something in the corner. A box, small enough to hide in your coat pocket. The lid is sealed with wax. Red, unbroken, official. You touch it. The wax is warm. Spoiler alert, that's not supposed to happen. You pocket the box anyway. Curiosity is a sin here, but it's also the only way anything ever gets discovered. The Vatican archives, those endless miles of shelving, are famous for what they don't let you see. The public thinks it's all old scrolls and papal letters. But that's just the showpiece. The real collection is buried deeper. Much deeper. You keep walking. The walls hum faintly, machines, perhaps. Or something else. And then you see it, a sigil carved into the stone, nearly erased by time. A serpent eating its tail. Not Christian. Not Roman. Something older. You feel the faintest vibration through your fingertips, like the stone is breathing. You take a step back. The air temperature drops. You can almost hear whispers, though that might just be the sound of the city far above, the faint murmur of faith layered over centuries of doubt. This is what they don't print on the postcards. The Vatican isn't just a place of worship, it's a vault of history's leftovers. The miracles. The cover-ups. The things too strange to explain away. And this is only the beginning. Because beneath this level, there are 39 more. Not floors exactly, just layers. Each one older, darker, and far less forgiving. Congratulations. You've just opened the first door. And it only gets worse. You shouldn't be here. That's the first thought that crosses your mind as you step deeper into the catacombs. The stairs end abruptly, spilling into a low corridor so narrow that your shoulder scrapes the wall every few steps. The air smells of limestone and something faintly metallic, like rusted nails and forgotten faith. Your flashlight flickers, which is always a good sign. Every horror story starts this way. A curious visitor, a dying light, and a hallway that looks like it hasn't seen sunlight since the world was still in black and white. But unlike those stories, you can't just yell cut and go home. You keep walking. Somewhere above your head lies the basilica, the shining centerpiece of faith, sunlight, and ceremony. Down here, it's the opposite. A mirror image of belief carved out of rock and shadow. The Vatican loves symmetry. Life above, death below. You pause at a fork in the tunnel. To your left, a faint breeze, carrying the scent of damp earth. To your right, silence. And a small sign bolted into the stone that simply reads Petrus. That name. You remember what they say, St. Peter, the first pope. The one who held the keys to heaven. But what they don't say is that for centuries, no one was entirely sure where he was buried. Or if he even was buried here. The church didn't exactly advertise its archaeological uncertainties. You follow the sign anyway. The passage tightens, the ceiling pressing closer until you're forced to crouch. The walls are lined with niches, some still filled with bones, others empty as if waiting for a new tenant. Every few meters, you see Latin inscriptions, simple prayers etched in trembling hands. The oldest date back nearly 2,000 years. The newest are, newer than you'd like. You find another door. Heavy, iron, deliberately unwelcoming. A symbol of the keys, the papal insignia, is carved into the lock plate, but the lock itself has been replaced by something modern. The keypad. Black, unlit, waiting. You're not supposed to get in. Which, of course, makes you want to get in more. So you do what anyone would do when faced with ancient secrets and modern locks. You knock. The sound echoes down the corridor, dull, hollow, strangely alive. You wait. Nothing. Then, faintly, something answers. Not a knock, not exactly. A shifting, a scrape, like stone against stone. You could leave now. Pretend you never heard it. Pretend this isn't happening. But curiosity is a parasite. It eats caution first. You press your hand against the door, and something gives way. Latch, maybe. Or a lock designed to open for those who shouldn't open it. The door groans inward, revealing a small chamber barely larger than a closet. Inside, a single stone sarcophagus rests beneath a slanted ceiling. Candles long burned out sit in rusted holders. The smell hits first, dust, myrrh, and thyme. You step closer. The inscription is nearly gone, eroded by centuries of damp. Only fragments remain. Petrus, Apostolus. The official story says Peter's bones were discovered in the mid-20th century, carefully verified, reburied with honor. But the official story also said the archives were just documents. So you don't take it too seriously. You kneel beside the sarcophagus. The stone is warm, too warm. You lean in, and for a moment you think you hear breathing. Not a voice, not a whisper, just the rhythm of something still alive in the air. A memory maybe, or guilt that's learned to exhale. You blink, and there it is. A small crack along the edge of the lid, just wide enough to see inside. You tell yourself not to look. You look anyway. Inside, the bones aren't white. They shimmer faintly, like candlelight under the skin of the world. Something metallic glints between the ribs. A key, small and ancient, bound to the spine by a coil of silver wire. Of course. It's colder than the air when you touch it, but you can't help pocketing it. That's your second mistake tonight. The first was coming here. As you back out of the chamber, the air changes. The faint hum from above is gone. The corridor feels wrong, heavier, as if the catacombs themselves just exhaled in disapproval. You glance back at the sarcophagus one last time. The lid has shifted, barely an inch, but enough. Something has moved. You turn off your flashlight. Not out of bravery. Out of respect. And maybe, just maybe, because it feels like you're not the only one down here anymore. The corridors twist until direction loses meaning. North, south, those are surface words. Down here, there's only forward and further. Your flashlight beam dances across the walls, catching fragments of frescoes long devoured by mildew. Angels with half-missing wings, saints with eyes scratched out. Devotion, vandalized by time. The key in your pocket feels heavier with every step. It knocks softly against your leg, A heartbeat that isn't yours. You keep telling yourself it's nothing, just cold metal, but deep down you know better. No relic in this place is ever just metal. You reach a landing, low and vaulted, where the stonework changes. Roman bricks give way to marble blocks, then to poured concrete. Layers of empire stacked like sediment. The Vatican doesn't erase its past, it buries it and builds on top. That's been the policy since Nero's garden parties. Ahead, a wrought iron gate stands closed. Above it, a Latin inscription chiseled clean even after centuries. Archivum Indicum. The index room. You've heard whispers about it. An internal archive that supposedly lists every text the church has ever banned, condemned, or quietly misplaced. A library of things too dangerous to read but too tempting to destroy. You fit the key into the lock. It turns with a sound like a sigh. Inside, the air is cold enough to fog your breath. The room stretches farther than your flashlight can reach, row after row of shelves rising into darkness. The shelves aren't filled with books, not entirely. There are scrolls sealed in glass tubes, metal boxes tagged with papal seals, and bundles of letters tied in silk ribbons that have turned gray with age. You pass a table at the entrance, its surface carved with shallow grooves where quills once scratched notes into wax tablets. There's a chair too, small, utilitarian, placed to face the door, as if whoever sat here preferred to watch anyone who entered rather than read. You whisper to yourself, it's just paper, though the room seems to disagree. The Vatican's real archives, those you can find in the guidebooks, contain over 80 kilometers of shelving. Most of it's administrative, land deeds, correspondence, papal bulls, tax receipts. Boring things that make the church function like a state. But rooms like this? They exist only in rumor. The places where curiosity and heresy overlap. You trail your fingers along a spine. Dissectus et Miraculous, 1473. The ink flakes off, black dust against your fingertips. Another reads Index Librorum Prohibitorum, 1664. The famous index, the list of banned books that once dictated what a good Catholic could or couldn't think about. Galileo's name appears on one volume, neatly crossed out in red, as if history itself were under editorial review. You laugh softly. The sound dies before it hits the next shelf. At the far end of the room, you notice something odd, a glass display case surrounded by rope barriers. Inside lies a single book, thick, bound in red leather that's gone almost brown with age. A brass plaque reads Seds Umbra, the shadow seat. No catalog number. No date. Just the title. The glass is clean, too clean for a place that's supposed to be abandoned. You circle the case, and a faint reflection catches your eye. Behind you, on the wall, hang portraits, men in papal robes, their faces faded into anonymity. Beneath one, a small brass button glints. You press it without thinking. A section of the wall slides open. The mechanism is ancient but well maintained. The gap reveals a spiral staircase carved directly into the rock. No light, just the smell of candle soot and something sweet, like old myrrh. You hesitate. Every sensible thought tells you to stop, to climb back up, to forget. But curiosity doesn't care about sense. It's the oldest sin for a reason. You descend. The air grows warmer again, not in a comforting way, more like a fever. The stone walls pulse faintly with the echo of machinery above, the Vatican's heart beating somewhere in the modern world while you sneak through its forgotten veins. At the bottom of the staircase, a wooden door waits. Hand-carved, older than the archives above. You reach for the handle and notice words etched into the lintel, Veritas non servanda. Truth must not be kept. You pause, unsure whether that's a warning or permission. Then you open the door. Inside, light flickers. Not electric. Candlelight, dancing across the faces of statues that line the walls. Saints, bishops, and figures you can't quite name. Each one holds a book to its chest, carved shut. In the center of the room stands a desk. On it, an open ledger written in 2 columns, names on one side, dates on the other. The last entry stops halfway through a word, the ink still darker than it should be. Someone was here recently. Maybe still is. You take a breath, close the ledger, and glance around. On the far wall, a new door stands half open, the faintest breeze coming through. The next secret waits beyond it, and it feels like it's been waiting a very long time. The candle flames shiver when you exhale. The air here feels thicker, full of something that might be dust or might be memory dust. You can still hear the basilica's heartbeat somewhere far above, the steady rhythm of footsteps, echoing sermons, and tour guides rehearsing history. Down here, history doesn't need rehearsal. It just waits. The ledger on the desk sits where you left it, but you can't shake the feeling that the ink has darkened since you looked away. You slide a finger over the names, Latin, Italian, a few written in a script you don't recognize. Scholars, cardinals, librarians. All keepers of something too dangerous for daylight. The last line still trails off midword. The pen rests beside it, the quill cracked but the nib still wet. Someone was writing, not long ago. You glance toward the half-open door. It's carved from wood so black it looks wet. No hinges visible, no latch. It hums quietly, the same faint vibration you felt back in the necropolis. The sound is not quite a voice, but not quite silence either. A low resonance that seems to recognize your presence. You tell yourself it's the air pressure. The walls disagree. You step closer. A thin draft spills through the crack, carrying the scent of candle soot and something older, iron, maybe, or stone that hasn't been touched since it was quarried. The smell of the first foundations. The smell of before. Your flashlight is dimming again. You tap it, and it gives you a brief flare of strength, enough to glimpse faint words burned into the door's surface. Audite non verba, sed intentum de. Listen not to words, but to intention. You take that as permission. The moment your palm meets the wood, sound floods in. Not loud, not human, but layered, as if the room behind the door holds the echo of every prayer ever whispered here. You hear snatches of languages long extinct, fragments of liturgy, pieces of confession. It's not words you understand, yet meaning seeps through anyway. Regret, wonder, fear. You push. The door opens without resistance, revealing a chamber smaller than you expected. Circular. Walls lined with metal filing drawers like the ribs of a machine. Each drawer labeled not with words but symbols. Crosses, stars, eyes, spirals. No two alike. In the center stands an iron lectern. Upon it, a single sheet of parchment pinned under glass. You step closer. The script is faint, but the title is clear enough. De Audientia Angelorum. On the hearing of angels. You smile. Of course. Because what else would be kept in a place like this? You read the first few lines, Latin again, but easier now, like your mind has learned the rhythm. The text describes an experiment from the 16th century. An unnamed cardinal who believed that divine messages could be recorded in the resonance of stone. He built chambers designed to listen to heaven. Some said he succeeded. Others said he went mad. You glance around the curved walls, the humming metal drawers, the steady vibration beneath your feet. Maybe both. You take a breath and lean closer to the parchment. Tiny notes are scribbled in the margins. Dates, coordinates, fragments of verses. One phrase repeats several times. Non solum Deus audit. Not only God listens. Your flashlight fades to a thin pulse. You look up, and for the first time, you notice the ceiling. It's mirrored. A perfect, black reflection of the room below. Except, no reflection of you. The lectern, the drawers, the parchment. But you? Nothing. The surface shows only empty space where you should stand. You blink once. The glass ripples like water. A soft voice, close enough to be your own, murmurs, "Truth must not be kept." You step back sharply. The drawers rattle in sequence, a mechanical whisper that circles the room. One slides open near your elbow with a slow metallic groan. Inside lies a reel of recording tape, unmarked, dusty, coiled tight. The end of it trails out like a tongue. You pick it up. It feels warm. You tell yourself it's just friction. You don't believe it. When you turn toward the doorway, you notice the candles outside have gone out. Only your failing flashlight remains, flickering in rhythm with your pulse. You take one last look at the mirrored ceiling. It's still empty, and step back through the door. The hum follows you into the hallway, quieter now but constant, like breathing behind the walls. You close the door. It seals itself without a sound. You check the tape again. On its metal spool, etched so faintly you almost miss it, is a numbered 4. You realize, with a kind of exhausted amusement, that you're collecting the Vatican's secrets like chapters in a book you shouldn't be writing. And this, apparently, is number 4. The air feels colder now. Somewhere deeper below, a new corridor waits, and you already know you're going to follow it. Because curiosity is its own religion. And tonight, you're a very devout believer. You follow the corridor downward. The stone steps have worn a shallow dip from centuries of cautious feet, the kind that walked while listening. The air is cooler again and carries a strange echo, as though every sound drags a ghost of itself a half-second behind. Even your breathing returns to you delayed, as if the walls are thinking it over before giving it back. Halfway down, a brass plaque appears, green with age, Archivum Sonorum, the sound archived. The lettering is simple, practical. Nothing theatrical, which somehow makes it worse. The Vatican has many secret rooms. The plain ones are usually the most unsettling. The stairwell opens into a chamber lined with shelving, but not for books. Reels, cylinders, and lacquered discs fill the racks like fossil shells. Dust lies thick on everything except the paths between them, swept by recent footsteps. Someone still visits. You know that, beginning in the late 1800s, Jesuit scholars experimented with early phonographs. They recorded choirs, Gregorian chants, even field sounds from missions in Africa and Asia. They called it preserving the voice of faith. Practical, archival, holy. At least on paper. You move between the rows. The smell here is chemical, old shellac, oil, a faint tang of ozone. The reels are tagged with Latin abbreviations. PS, for Psalms, Lit. For Liturgy, EXP for Experimentum. The last one appears often. Too often. You stop at a desk near the center. A phonograph sits there, its brass horn blackened with time. A notebook lies open beside it. The handwriting is precise, almost obsessive, voice captured, Basilica choir, frequency 512 Hz, secondary resonance detected, source unidentified. You smile, though it doesn't reach your eyes. Of course they would try to measure miracles. You set the tape you found on the spindle. The machine is old, but when you crank the handle, the motor hums to life. The sound that rises from the horn isn't music. It's a room, air moving, footsteps, a heartbeat of stone. Then a faint human murmur, too distant to make out words. You think it's Latin, but the cadence feels reversed, as if played backward through a mirror. You lean closer. The voice sharpens, becomes a whisper that almost forms a sentence. Non solum Deus audit. Not only God listens. You pull back quickly, heart stuttering. The phonograph continues to spin, the voice looping softer each time until it fades into the room's own hum. You switch it off. The silence that follows feels heavier, deliberate. From somewhere deeper in the shelves comes a slow metallic creak, another reel turning by itself. You wait. Nothing moves. Probably the air, you tell yourself. Probably. You turn the notebook's page. More notes. Tests with marble resonance effective. Voices persist after cessation of source. Recommend containment. The date is 1939. The signature a single initial, P. You imagine him, a scholar crouched over this same desk on the eve of war, convinced he could archive the soul of sound. He'd have heard bombs overhead, the world ending one echo at a time, and thought, I can save this. You close the notebook gently. At the far end of the chamber stands a door of thick glass. Behind it, a narrow vault glows with a faint blue light, modern now, wired, humming. The Vatican keeps up with technology, at least when secrecy requires it. Inside are newer machines, digital consoles, headphones, a bank of labeled drives. The future built quietly over the past. You step closer to the glass. A motion sensor clicks. For a second, the speakers inside whisper static that forms your own breathing pattern back at you. Then silence. You rest your hand on the door. Still powered. Still listening. Somewhere behind you, the phonograph ticks once more as its cylinder slows to a stop. The echo of it bounces off the stone vaulting and dissolves into quiet. You realize this archive isn't about keeping voices. It's about testing how long a voice can last once the body is gone. The Vatican calls it preservation. You might call it curiosity with better funding. You take the reel from the spindle, coil it carefully, and slide it into your coat. It hums faintly against your chest. When you climb the steps back toward the main tunnel, each footfall seems to arrive a heartbeat late, as though the archive is repeating you, learning you. The plaque at the entrance gleams briefly in your flashlight, the Latin motto almost legible beneath the corrosion. It doesn't say, Sound Archive. Not really. The older engraving, half erased, reads Archivum Vocum Mortalium. Archive of Mortal Voices. You decide not to look back. Up ahead, the corridor bends left, toward another passage, and whatever secret the Vatican buried after they learned how to record silence itself. The passage narrows until you're forced to turn sideways. The stone walls are different here, polished, smoother, as if someone once cared how they looked. Your flashlight beam slides along the surface and throws back a soft shimmer. At first you think it's dampness. Then you realize it's reflection. The Vatican catacombs were never supposed to shine. You reach a small archway where the ceiling dips low. Over it, carved in Latin so faint you have to trace it with your fingertips, are the words Speculum Fidei, the mirror of faith. You duck inside. The chamber opens into a circular room, roughly 20 feet across, its walls lined entirely with mirrors, dozens of them, framed in bronze and gold leaf gone dark with age. Each mirror is angled differently, like a kaleidoscope of stillness. Some are cracked. Others have black spots spreading like mold across the glass. The air smells faintly of wax and vinegar, a restorer's touch from long ago. You can imagine the purpose. In the Renaissance, the Church collected not just relics but technologies. The mirrors of Venice, the lenses of Florence, the prisms that painters used to study light before painting angels. Reflection was a science, and the line between optics and theology was thin. Light was truth, after all. To study it was to study God. You walk the perimeter slowly. Each mirror offers a slightly different version of you. Taller, shorter, distorted by the curve of the glass. None of them quite accurate. One even shows you from behind, though you're certain no one's standing there. You blink and it's gone. At the center of the floor, a bronze pedestal holds a large convex mirror mounted on a stand. Its surface is spotless. A brass tag at its base reads Speculum Majoris 1633. That date stirs something. 1633, the year Galileo faced the Inquisition for saying the earth moved. You can't help wondering if he looked into this mirror before they condemned him. Maybe it was built for that trial, a device meant to show reflection without distortion. Or perhaps distortion was the point. You lean closer. Your reflection shifts, slightly delayed, as though the mirror is considering whether to show you at all. Behind your image, faint shapes flicker, arches, torches, perhaps the same room but in another century. You blink again and it's just you, pale and smaller than you remember. At the far side of the room, you find a workbench covered with instruments, brass compasses, glass lenses, half-burned candles. Among them lies a leather-bound notebook, its pages fragile, half stuck together with age. You open it carefully. Sketches fill the margins, diagrams of light rays bouncing off mirrors into narrow cones. Below one drawing, a Latin phrase, Lux servet anime, light serves the soul. You flip another page. Notes in Italian. Something about recording confession by reflection. You read it twice. The idea was absurd even then, mirrors used to capture the image of the penitent's face so that truth could be preserved. But perhaps it wasn't about faces. Perhaps the Church wanted to see what truth itself looked like when caught in glass. You glance up at the walls again. The mirrors seem to shimmer faintly, like they're remembering. One mirror near the floor stands darker than the rest. You crouch to examine it. Its surface isn't silvered. It's obsidian, volcanic glass, the kind the Aztecs once used for scrying. A relic of conquest repurposed for contemplation. You can see only a shadow of your outline, rippling as if beneath water. When you move your head, the shadow doesn't. It stays, gazing up at you expressionless. You step back quickly and bump the pedestal. The main mirror wobbles slightly and the reflections shift in unison. For a heartbeat, every version of you turns its head toward the door. Then everything settles. You exhale, slow, deliberate, trying not to laugh. It comes out as a sigh instead. On the workbench, another small brass plate catches your eye. It's engraved with a catalog number and a single Latin word, continuatio. Continuation. A direction maybe. Or a warning. You pocket the plate. Its edges are sharp enough to sting your finger. When you look up again, the mirrors nearest the exit reflect only darkness. Your own outline has faded into the room behind them. You take that as your cue to leave. Outside the chamber, the corridor bends upward, a spiral cut into the stone like a drill into memory. You climb, the air warmer now, carrying a faint scent of ink and parchment. Somewhere above, light trembles, the pale, bureaucratic glow of electric bulbs. You realize you're approaching the Vatican's modern archive levels again, where history and administration share the same hallways. But as you climb the last few steps, you hear something. A voice, faint, mechanical, maybe a loudspeaker. A language you recognize only as Latin, repeating a single line over and over. Lux servit anim. Light serves the soul. You pause, hand on the wall. The sound fades as quickly as it came, leaving only the silence of stone and your reflection lingering in your memory, smaller, delayed, a few seconds out of sync. You start walking again. Because every secret, like every reflection, leads to another. And somewhere above, another door waits. The stairs end beneath a wooden trapdoor. When you push, it lifts with a sigh of stale air and a faint perfume of dust and ink. You emerge into a corridor lined with metal cabinets, the kind that hums softly under fluorescent light. Civilization again, or its most bureaucratic imitation. The Vatican's modern archive levels are said to hold more than 100 miles of shelving. Down here, the past is organized by category: heresy, land grants, canon law, correspondence, miracles. Every era boxed, labeled, neutralized. History, defanged by filing systems. You switch off your flashlight. The overhead bulbs are dim but steady. Somewhere a fan turns, rhythmic, like breathing. You could almost imagine the building itself exhaling centuries of secrets through its vents. You follow a row marked Indus Generalis until the numbering stops making sense. The cabinets here are older, their drawers wooden, labels written by hand. You pass drawers for Inquisition and Confessions Extraordinary. Then you find it, one label so faded it's nearly blank except for a single word burned into the grain. Ombre. Shadows. You pull the drawer open. Inside lie folders wrapped in oilcloth, each marked only with a date and a wax seal. Some seals bear papal insignia, others something stranger, rings of intertwined circles, an emblem you don't recognize. The wax has melted slightly, as if warmed from within. You unwrap one folder. Inside, a stack of black and white photographs, each showing the same small chapel at different times of day. In every image, the light through the stained glass forms the same silhouette on the wall, a figure kneeling, though the chapel is empty. Notes in the margin read, recorded phenomenon persists 19 minutes post-sunset. Source undetermined. You set the photos aside and open another file. This one holds sketches of statues, familiar saints, but drawn with their shadows facing the wrong direction. Beneath each image, a date, a location, a terse comment. Observed in sacristy. Shadows fixed for duration of prayer. A chill slides through you that has nothing to do with temperature. You think of the mirrors below, of light serving the soul. Maybe shadows serve memory. Maybe that's what these people were cataloging, the residue left when faith burns too bright. At the back of the drawer rests a thin ledger titled simply Index Umbri. The handwriting inside is meticulous, looping, almost elegant. Each entry lists a place, a year, and a short description. Lisbon 1755, shadow remained after earthquake. Lourdes 1858, silhouette appeared without source. Rome 1963, conclave chamber. Darkness persisted after light extinguished. Halfway through, you find a page with no date, only a notation. Speculum majores, reactivated. Your stomach tightens. The mirror. Someone used it again. You close the ledger and glance around. The fluorescent lights flicker once, twice, then hold steady. But on the polished floor you notice something wrong. Your own shadow is a step behind you. When you move, it hesitates before catching up. You tell yourself it's the lights. Cheap fixtures. A trick of timing. The drawer won't close properly. You press harder, and it slides in with a wooden sigh. The fan above you stops. For a heartbeat there's total silence, followed by a faint scuffing sound, like papers shifting inside the cabinets. Then another sound, quiet footsteps, measured, coming from the far end of the aisle. You turn, but no one's there. Only the rows of cabinets, stretching away like pews. You wait, listening. The footsteps stop when you do. You take a slow breath and start walking again, keeping to the center of the corridor. At the end, a door stands ajar, light spilling through a thin line. A sign above it reads Catalogus Privatus. Private catalog. The key you took from Peter's tomb presses against your leg, suddenly heavier again, as if remembering its purpose. You fit it into the lock. It turns smoothly, like it's been waiting. Beyond the door lies another room, smaller, darker, filled with vertical drawers that reach to the ceiling. Their brass handles gleam like watchful eyes. On the nearest drawer, a label in fresh ink reads, Continuatio. The same word from the mirror chamber. You don't open it yet. You just stand there, hand resting on the cool brass, aware that every step down here has been leading you to this place. A library of shadows catalogued like relics, and now, perhaps, waiting for one more entry, yours. You exhale, slow, steady, and pull the drawer open. The drawer glides out with surprising ease, silent on its tracks, as if it has been opened often. Inside are hundreds of thin envelopes, each identical, cream paper, sealed with a single drop of red wax. No labels. No catalog numbers. Just a small handwritten name on each, written in the same precise script. At first, you assume they're old. Names of saints, perhaps. Martyrs. The kind of things one might expect in the Vatican's private catalog. But then you notice the ink, fresh, not faded. Ballpoint, not quill. Some envelopes are dated. 1974, 1992, 2008, a few even newer. You pick one at random. Giovanni B. You hesitate, then slide a fingernail under the wax and break the seal. Inside is a single sheet of thin parchment, folded twice. You unfold it carefully. The handwriting is the same, neat, deliberate. It reads, Confession recorded. Shadow retained. Status resolved. Below that, a faint fingerprint. No signature. You frown. The Vatican does keep records of confessions in theory. Not individual ones, just the existence of the sacrament performed. But this sounds like an audit. Like someone cataloging repentance as if it were inventory. You open another envelope. This one is labeled Maria L. The note reads, Confession incomplete. Shadow persistent. Status ongoing. There's a small photograph inside, black and white, of a woman's silhouette projected onto a church wall. No body casting it. Just the shadow. You slip the photo back into the envelope, suddenly aware of the faint hum in the room. It's the same sound you heard in the sound archive below. A low, steady vibration, like air moving through a throat. The cabinets seem to breathe with it. You take another envelope. No name, just a number. 1173. Inside, a typewritten note. Subject unknown. Shadow separated during liturgical test. Containment successful. You stop there. You don't want to know what containment means. At the back of the drawer lies a small black box. Wood, not metal. The lock is simple. You use the brass plate from the mirror chamber to pry it open. Inside are dozens of thin glass slides, each labeled with a name and a date. You hold one up to the light. It shows a faint image, a person's profile, almost transparent, surrounded by dark haloing. Early photographic technique. Collodion process, maybe. But the dates etched along the edges don't match photography's history. Some are centuries too early. You check another. This one bears no human form, just a twisting shape, darker in the center, fading outward like smoke trapped in glass. The label reads, Speculum Majoris, Test 3. You set the slide back gently. The Vatican has always balanced faith and science uneasily. Astronomers, anatomists, alchemists, many of them priests first. To them, the boundary between soul and matter was just a question of measurement. Maybe these slides were their way of measuring sin, or proof, or something worse. You look at the open drawer, rows upon rows of names. Each one a life, a confession, a shadow preserved for study. You realize the index of shadows wasn't a metaphor. It's literal. Every confession leaves an imprint, and the Vatican has been collecting them. You think of the whisper from the phonograph, not only God listens. You start to close the drawer, but your hand freezes halfway. Near the back, a fresh envelope catches your eye. The name written in new ink, still glossy under the light. 2 words. Yours. You stare at it, heartbeat slowing until it barely exists. The hum in the room deepens, like the building is inhaling. You reach for the envelope but stop before touching it. The wax seal hasn't dried completely. Someone just placed it there. Behind you, a drawer slides shut by itself. The lights flicker once, twice, and steady again. Your reflection glimmers faintly in the brass handle in front of you, distorted but recognizable, until it blinks when you don't. You back away slowly. The envelope stays where it is, waiting. Maybe that's how the Vatican keeps its secrets. It doesn't hide them. It simply writes your name on the next page. You turn toward the corridor. The hum follows you out. When you close the door, the lights on the other side go dark, one by one. The last thing you see before it shuts completely is the faint red dot of wax, gleaming like a small, patient heartbeat. The corridor is quiet again, the kind of quiet that makes you hear the small things, your shoes against the stone, the faint rasp of air through vents hidden somewhere overhead. You keep walking until the light shifts from the dry fluorescence of the archives to a softer, older glow. Lanterns. Real flame, steady and low. That's when you realize you're no longer alone. Someone stands at the far end of the hall. A man, tall but slightly bent, wearing a gray cassock that looks more functional than ceremonial. His hair is white, but his posture is firm, practiced. He doesn't move toward you. Just watches, hands clasped loosely behind his back. You stop, waiting for him to speak first. He doesn't. Instead, he turns slightly and gestures toward an open doorway to his right. You follow. Because of course you do. Inside is a small office, though calling it that feels wrong. It's more like a monastic cell adapted for administration. A single wooden desk, 2 chairs, a crucifix, and shelves stacked with books that look older than most countries. On the desk sits a typewriter, its keys worn shiny, a cup of coffee gone cold beside it. The smell of ink, wax, and time hangs in the air. Sit, he says finally. His voice is soft, unhurried, with the kind of accent that belongs everywhere and nowhere, Latin trained, Italian softened, maybe a trace of something Slavic underneath. You've come far. You sit. The chair creaks in protest. He regards you for a moment, his eyes pale blue, the kind that see through politeness straight into motive. You've been in the restricted levels, he says. Not a question. Few find their way there without help. You don't answer. He doesn't seem to expect one. Do you know what you've been looking at? He asks. You hesitate then, records. He smiles faintly. Yes. But not of the living. Not of the dead either. We preserve what exists between. He reaches for a drawer in his desk and pulls out a small object. A glass slide, identical to the ones from the drawer of names. He holds it up to the light. Inside, a faint blur, almost invisible, like breath on cold air. We call them residues, he says. The shadows left when a soul confesses. Most vanish. Some refuse. You stare. You keep them. We keep everything. He says it with neither pride nor apology. History is not written in words alone. It is written in what people fear to speak. We collect that too. He sets the slide down gently. Do you believe confession erases sin? You open your mouth, but he raises a hand before you can answer. It doesn't, he says softly. It transfers it. One soul to another. From penitent to priest, from priest to archive. Paper, sound like. The form changes, but the burden remains. He leans back. That's why the rooms below exist. The sound archive, the mirrors, the index. Each an attempt to contain what faith alone cannot. You glance at the door, but he shakes his head. No need. You're safe here. Then, after a pause, for now. He picks up a folder from his desk and opens it. Inside, your name. The same handwriting. The same red wax mark. We've been watching you since you opened the tomb, he says. Few people still come looking for truth. Most just want mystery. You wanted proof. You don't deny it. He closes the folder. You'll find no proof here. Only mirrors that reflect what you already believe. He stands, the cassock whispering softly around him. Follow me. You rise, and he leads you through a narrow passage behind the office. A shortcut, you suspect, carved centuries ago. It opens into a long hall lined with iron doors, each bearing a symbol instead of a number. Crosses, circles, keys, suns. He stops before one marked with an hourglass. This, he says, is where we keep what should not be remembered. The index of shadows records the echo. But here, he places a hand on the cold metal, here we keep the voice. You feel the air change, heavier, almost liquid. He looks at you, calm and expressionless. You've already heard it once. In the sound archive. The whisper. Not only God listens. He nods slightly as if reading the memory from your face. It spoke because you listened. Most people walk by in silence. You open the reel. He unlocks the door. Darkness waits inside. Not empty, full, thick, breathing. This, he says quietly, is the part of confession that never ends. He gestures for you to step closer but not in. Remember, he says, voice soft as candle smoke, truth is not forbidden here. It is simply quarantined. He closes the door, relocks it, and turns away. The archives will close soon, he says. You should leave while they still remember the way out. As he walks back toward the office, the lantern light fades around him, and for a moment, his shadow doesn't follow. You stand alone again in the corridor, the air heavy with the faint tang of iron and candle smoke. The archivist's footsteps fade somewhere behind you, but their rhythm lingers, measured, steady, the sound of someone who's been walking the same path for years. Centuries, maybe. You look back at the iron door marked with the hourglass. The metal has cooled already, but when you touch it, your fingertips come away with a thin residue. Not dust, not oil, something colder, as if memory could condense. The door hums faintly, an almost inaudible vibration you feel more than hear. You step closer, resting your forehead lightly against the surface. For a moment, you think you hear voices, layered and overlapping, speaking in different languages, different centuries. Latin prayers, Italian murmurs, a burst of whispered English, all blending into a single, low current of sound. It isn't frightening, exactly, just tired, like the noise of history itself exhaling through the cracks. You pull away, dizzy. The corridor seems longer than before. The air thicker. Every door identical, every symbol faintly luminous. Crosses, flames, eyes, serpents biting their own tails. Each one humming in a slightly different tone, together forming a kind of slow, mournful chord. You start walking. After a dozen steps, you notice the light shifting, not dimming, but remembering. The walls ahead glow faintly where you passed before, as if the stone itself recalls movement. Your shadow drifts along beside you, but you realize it's not quite keeping pace. It lags as though distracted. The archivist's words echo in your head. Truth is not forbidden. It is quarantined. You turn a corner and find another door, smaller, wooden this time, carved with intricate spirals. At its center, a bronze plaque bears no symbol, just a phrase in Latin, Porta Meminit. The door that remembers. You reach for the handle. It turns before you touch it. The hinges sigh open to reveal a small chamber, circular again, like so many rooms down here. The walls are paneled in dark oak, lined with carved niches holding candles. In the center stands a single chair facing an arched mirror framed in gold. The mirror surface is veiled with a thin layer of dust, disturbed only by one faint streak where someone's hand once wiped it clear. You step inside. The air smells faintly of cedar and beeswax. There's no sound but your own breathing. When you move closer, you notice the mirror isn't quite reflective. It's deeper, like water. You see your outline, but behind it, a shifting darkness, moving with its own slow tide. You remember the sound archive. The whisper. The way the phonograph had breathed. The same vibration hums softly here, woven into the air. You kneel to study the frame. In tiny script around the edge, almost hidden among the filigree, are hundreds of engraved names. Some ancient, carved so deep the letters have softened. Others sharp and recent. You trace one near the bottom. The brass is warm to the touch. Your fingertip comes away with the faintest shimmer of gold dust. You sit in the chair, because it feels expected of you. The air thickens slightly, the candles flutter as though adjusting to your presence. The mirror stirs. At first it's nothing more than a ripple, like wind across water. Then shapes begin to form. Faint silhouettes, human, layered over one another. They move slowly, murmuring, faces half-formed, expressions unreadable. The hum deepens until it feels like a heartbeat in your chest that isn't yours. One of the shapes separates from the rest and turns toward you. The features sharpen. Familiar. It's you. Or rather, the version that stood before the mirror in the chamber of mirrors. The one that blinked when you didn't. It moves closer, the glass fogging where its breath would be. When it speaks, the voice is low and calm, like your own in a different octave. Do you understand now? It asks. You don't answer. The reflection smiles, small, patient, the same way the Archivist did. Every confession is a door, it says. And every door remembers who opened it. The mirror darkens. The shape dissolves. Only your own reflection remains, pale, blinking, utterly ordinary. The hum fades. The candles steady. You stand slowly. On the back of the chair, carved into the wood, you notice another Latin line. Cain, narrator. He who enters becomes the story. You leave the room quietly. The door closes on its own, the lock sliding into place with a final, gentle click. As you step back into the corridor, the hum beneath the floor resumes, faint, pulsing, endless. And for the first time, you realize the building itself isn't just remembering you. It's writing you down. You walk until the air changes again, less stale now, touched with something almost sweet. Parchment, maybe. The kind of smell that clings to centuries of words. The corridor widens into a reading room, small, domed, lined with wooden tables and tall bookcases locked behind latticed brass doors. A single lamp burns on one of the desks, its shade green glass, its light trembling softly as if it resents being awake. On the table beside it sits a ring of keys, old iron mixed with new brass, heavy enough to anchor a confession. You glance around. Empty. But not abandoned. A half-finished cup of tea cools near the lamp. Steam still curls faintly upward. Whoever was here, left recently. You approach the table. The keys are neatly arranged, too neat, as though each position matters. One key, smaller than the rest, lies apart from the ring. Its head bears a single engraving, Custos Librorum, keeper of the books. You pick it up. It hums faintly in your palm, not mechanical, more like the vibration of a tuning fork. The air around you thickens. Something behind the locked shelves stirs, a faint rustle of paper, though no draft moves. You test the nearest lock. The key slides in smoothly, clicks once. The gate swings open without resistance. Inside, rows of volumes bound in leather so dark they almost absorb light. No titles on the spines, only stamped symbols, circles intersected by crosses, labyrinths, hourglasses. You pull one out carefully. The leather crackles softly. Inside, the pages are filled with handwriting, but not the usual script of archivists. This is older, denser. Margins crowded with annotations in 3, maybe 4 different hands. You can't read most of it, but one section stands out. A passage written in clear Latin across the center of a page. Vocem non scribimus, sed custodimus. We do not write the voice, we keep it. You flip another page. Beneath layers of ink, something faintly embossed into the parchment catches the light. Lines, circular, concentric. You angle it toward the lamp and realize it's a diagram of sound waves. Someone tried to map speech or prayer like a mathematical pattern. Another note nearby. Confession as frequency, containment unstable. You close the book gently. The shelves behind you sigh, as though hundreds of bindings exhaled together. You take a slow breath, then notice something else. A small door set low into the wall, half hidden behind the shelves. It's not meant to be seen. A nameplate above it, nearly illegible beneath dust, reads Archivio Custodis. The librarian's archive. You crouch and fit the small key into the lock. It turns with a soft click. The door opens onto a narrow crawlspace lit by a faint amber glow. The air is warmer here, carrying the scent of oil lamps and paper. You step inside. The passage leads to a circular chamber no wider than 10 feet. The walls are lined with hundreds of small drawers, each labeled with a year. 1450, 1492, 1600, 1798, each date like a heartbeat in history. At the center of the room stands a lectern, on it a single open volume. You approach. The handwriting is meticulous, looping, unmistakably the same as the Archivist's. The entry at the top of the page reads, "To record a truth is to imprison it. To guard it is to become its keeper." Beneath it, lists of names, not saints, not popes, but titles. Custos 1410, Custos 1558, Custos 1789. The most recent name written just weeks ago. You look closer. The last entry isn't a name. It's a blank line. Below it, a single instruction, next key bearer, to be chosen by encounter. You stare at the words until their meaning settles uneasily. The hum from the key in your hand deepens. You place it on the lectern, but it clings faintly to your palm, as though unwilling to let go. When you finally set it down, the amber light flickers, and the air in the small chamber contracts around you. Not malicious, just aware. You hear movement behind you. Soft, deliberate, like someone turning a page. You turn back toward the entrance, but the crawl space is darker now. The reading room beyond has gone still. You step forward, but the passage feels longer, the light retreating with each step. By the time you emerge, the lamp on the desk has burned out, and the cup of tea has stopped steaming. On the table where the ring of keys once lay, there's only one left. The small one you carried. It glints faintly in the dying light, as though it's waiting for you to take it back. You do. And when you slip it into your pocket, the silence of the room folds neatly around you, sealing itself like a page closing in a book. You glance toward the door that leads deeper into the archives. Beyond it, the air vibrates faintly, steady as a pulse. Somewhere below, a voice whispers your name, calm, patient, as though reading it from an old ledger. The whisper follows you down the next hallway, not echoing but threading through the air like smoke through cloth. You try to tell yourself it's ventilation, ancient ducts, a draft from older rooms, but the rhythm of it is unmistakably human. Inhale. Exhale. Whisper. Fuzz. The corridor descends again, the stone steps uneven, worn into shallow troughs by centuries of careful feet. The walls here are damp, faintly luminous with mineral streaks that catch your light like veins under skin. You feel it before you see it, the slow, measured pull of air moving in and out, as though the building itself breathes. At the bottom of the stairs, a door waits, iron, circular, like the hatch of a ship. Embossed across its center are the Latin words Spiritus Custoditor. The breath is kept. You touch the surface. Not from heat, from life. The iron seems to pulse once, faintly, as if acknowledging your presence. You turn the wheel lock. It resists, then yields with a sound like an old man sighing. The door swings open onto a cavernous space carved directly into the stone. No torches, no electric light, yet the air glows faintly blue, illuminated by glass cylinders embedded in the walls. Inside each cylinder, vapor, swirling in slow motion, coiling and dissipating like fog trapped underwater. Every breath in the room feels slightly stolen, slightly borrowed. You step closer to one of the cylinders. Tiny inscriptions run along the brass rims, each marked with a name and a date. Benedictus 15, 1922. Ignatius Loyola 1556. Anonymous, Confessio Perdita. The Lost Confession. You press your palm against the glass. The vapor inside trembles. For a heartbeat, you swear it forms a face, serene, eyes closed, then unravels again into mist. You remember the Archivist's words, truth is quarantined. So this, you realize, is where it goes. Every unspoken word, every breath taken before a confession, held somewhere between guilt and grace. The Vatican never believed in erasing sin. It only believed in containment. You walk deeper into the vault. The rows of cylinders curve endlessly, some cracked and leaking faint wisps that coil across the floor. The temperature drops with each step until you can see your own breath join the air, a small ghost among thousands. At the center of the chamber stands a plinth, carved from black marble. On it rests an enormous bell jar, the glass thick and clear as water. Beneath it, nothing but air, or what looks like air. But when you draw near, your chest tightens. You feel the vibration in your ribs, low and constant, like a heartbeat that doesn't belong to you. An inscription runs around the base, Primus Spiritus. The first breath. The sound grows louder the closer you get. A slow inhale, a long exhale, steady, eternal. You realize the vibration isn't in the air. It's inside you, aligning with your lungs, synchronizing. For a brief second, you and the room breathe together. Then it stops. The silence that follows is absolute, crushing. The air feels too heavy to move. You exhale sharply, and the sound of your breath rings out like thunder in the stillness. Every cylinder around you trembles. The vapors swirl faster, condensing into shapes, faces, hands, the outlines of bodies gasping for words. The sound that fills the vault isn't a scream. It's the collective sigh of memory released after centuries of holding still. You stagger back. The bell jar cracks along one side with a sharp, crystalline sound. A thin line of blue light leaks through the fracture, spreading upward like a vein of lightning. Then a whisper, directly behind you. Don't let it breathe. You turn. The Archivist stands at the threshold, calm as ever, eyes catching the faint glow. You shouldn't be here, he says softly. This chamber was sealed for a reason. What is it, you ask? The words come out like an exhale you didn't mean to release. He looks at the cracked glass, the drifting vapors. The first confession, he says. The first voice to ask forgiveness before language existed. It never stopped breathing. The jar cracks again, louder now. A sliver of light cuts across the floor. The Archivist moves closer, his cassock stirring the vapor. If it escapes, he murmurs, it won't destroy anything. It will remember everything. The hum returns, deeper, endless, vibrating in your teeth. You take a step back. The Archivist doesn't. He lays a hand on the glass. The crack freezes mid-spread, the light dimming. The breath quiets. Turns to you. You've seen enough. You nod, unable to speak. The air seems to release you, the heaviness easing from your lungs. Upstairs, he says. The door will open for you now. You glance once more at the jar, the faint shimmer pulsing like a heartbeat under ice, then climb the stairs. Each breath feels new, borrowed again. The hum fades behind you. By the time you reach the next corridor, the silence has settled like dust, heavy but clean. You press your back to the cold wall and close your eyes. The Vatican keeps many things buried. Some of them still breathe. You reach another landing. The stairway ends in a small vestibule lit by a single bulb that buzzes faintly, as though it too has been awake for far too long. The air smells of parchment again, but older this time, brittle, sun-starved, almost sweet. Your shoes scrape softly on the floor. The echo lingers a second too long. There's a door to your left, half open. On its surface, a faded symbol, two concentric circles connected by a line. You've seen it before. Once in the chamber of mirrors. Once on the key in your pocket. You push the door open. Inside, darkness and then light, pale and diffuse, reflected off thousands of thin sheets of metal suspended from the ceiling by fine wire. Each plate shivers slightly in the air currents, catching light like the scales of a sleeping animal. Together, they form a vast, undulating map spread across the walls, the ceiling, the floor. You step inside carefully. The metal plates are engraved, not with words, but with tiny etchings, waveforms, spirals, arcs. Sound rendered into geometry. Every breath, every whisper, every bell that ever rang above these catacombs might be captured here. The Vatican, it seems, has charted silence itself. At the room's center stands a pedestal, and upon it, a single object, a compass. Its casing is brass, tarnished to near black. The needle doesn't point north. It spins lazily, uncertain, as if overwhelmed by too many directions at once. You pick it up. It stops spinning immediately, points toward one of the walls. You turn. There, among the thousands of plates, one stands still. Its surface doesn't shimmer. It's matte, dead, absorbing all light. You walk toward it. As you approach, the air grows heavy again, pressing against your chest. Your ears pop, a shift in pressure, subtle but undeniable. The silence here is different. It's not the absence of sound. It's the presence of something that devours it. You reach out and touch the plate. A low tone ripples through the room, so deep you feel it in your ribs before you hear it. The other plates respond, vibrating in sympathetic resonance, their faint chime building into an almost melodic hum. The entire room seems to breathe. Inhale, exhale, again, until the sound steadies into a pattern. It's a voice. No, not a voice, the shape of one. A prayer translated into vibration. You step back, realizing what you're hearing. A recording of something spoken before recording existed. A preserved resonance, not of speech, but of intention. The compass in your hand begins to hum in time with the sound. The needle trembles, its tip glowing faintly blue. When you tilt it toward the wall, the dead plate shivers once and slides aside, revealing a narrow slit of darkness behind it. Of course, a door. You step through. On the other side, a chamber no bigger than a closet, but lined entirely with black stone polished to a mirror's finish. Your reflection stares back at you from every surface, multiplied endlessly. In the center of the floor, an inlaid symbol, 2 circles, a line. The same as on the door. The same as on the compass. You kneel because it feels required. The air is colder here, thinner. When you exhale, your breath doesn't rise. It spreads, flattening against the floor like spilled smoke. The hum outside fades. Silence returns, pure and absolute. You look down. The symbol beneath you glows faintly. The line connecting the circles brightens first, then the circles themselves. The light runs up your legs, gentle as a pulse. A whisper, not from behind you this time, but from within the stone. Every sound leaves a shadow. The meaning sinks slowly, like a stone into deep water. The walls around you shift. The reflections blur, then clear again, but they aren't all you anymore. The faces looking back were the robes of priests, monks, scribes. Some are centuries old, their eyes hollow but watchful. Each one mouths the same word in unison, silentium. And then, just as suddenly, it all stops. The glow fades. The room returns to black stone, your own reflection staring back once more, wide-eyed and quiet. The plate behind you slides closed, sealing the chamber. You feel no panic, only stillness, vast and absolute. It's as if the silence itself has weight, pressing into your skin until your heartbeat slows to match its rhythm. You stand. The compass in your hand is still glowing faintly. The needle no longer spins. It points straight down, toward the floor, toward whatever lies beneath. And as you stare, the faintest sound reaches your ears again. A single, slow exhale from the stone below. The Vatican's silence, you realize, is not emptiness. It's containment. And somewhere underneath, something still remembers how to speak. You don't remember how you left the map room. One moment, you were staring at the compass needle still pointing down. The next, you were standing in another corridor, dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of iron and old paper. It's quieter here, not silent, but muffled. As if the walls themselves are lined with pages too heavy to echo. And yet, You can hear something faint. A soft, irregular dripping. You follow the sound. It leads you to a doorway with no inscription, just a strip of red wax smeared across the frame, cracked and half-melted. Beyond it, you glimpse shelves, ink pots, quills, the unmistakable shape of a scriptorium. You push the door open. The smell hits you first, oil, dust, and something metallic, familiar in a way that makes your stomach tighten up. The room is filled with desks, each one arranged with military precision. Quills stand upright in small holders. Ink bottles sit uncorked but full. A faint mist hangs in the air, shimmering like the breath of something living. You step closer to one of the desks. The parchment on it is blank except for one line written in perfect Latin script. Verbum vivit. The word lives. The ink hasn't dried. It glistens wetly, the color deep and dark, too dark to. You lean closer, the smell of it unmistakable now. Not inked. Blood. It's old but still warm enough to reflect the light. You take a step back. The quill, still poised in its holder, trembles. Slowly, as if moved by an unseen hand, it dips itself into the bottle, then drags across the page again. A second line appears, written in a faster, almost frantic hand. Non moritur. It does not die. The other quills on the nearby desks begin to stir, scratching, whispering, writing without hands. The sound builds into a soft, feverish chorus of scratching parchment and dripping ink. You glance at the walls and realize they're covered in parchment too, thousands of sheets pinned in careful layers, every one written in different handwriting. Words crawling over one another like veins. You walk closer. The parchment rustles, alive under the air's faint current. A word catches your eye, written in red again, Custos. The keeper. You see it repeated over and over, in dozens of hands, centuries apart. Each line bleeding slightly into the next. You look down at your hand, the one that held the compass, and notice a faint red stain on your fingertips. You wipe it against your coat, but it doesn't smudge. It's already absorbed. You move deeper into the scriptorium. At the far end stands a massive desk, the kind used by chief scribes or censors. Upon it rests a massive ledger bound in dark leather, its clasp a simple iron lock. A keyhole, round and small. You reach into your pocket. The librarian's key hums softly. It fits perfectly. You turn it. The lock releases with a dull, tired click. The ledger opens by itself, pages flipping rapidly as though it's looking for something. Then it stops on a blank spread. Lines of text begin to appear, one by one, written in red ink as if by invisible hands. A new hand enters. A new keeper listens. Blood remembers what ink forgets. The quills fall silent. The air in the room thickens. You touch the page. It's warm. The surface feels almost like skin stretched too thin over something breathing. A pulse throbs faintly under your fingertip. And then, from behind you, a voice, calm, even, but far too close. You shouldn't have opened that. You turn slowly. The archivist stands in the doorway again, though now his robe is stained, faint splatters of red near the cuffs, as if he's been writing too long. He looks at the ledger, then at you. You've seen how they wrote it, haven't you? He says softly. The treaties. The exorcisms. The names of the unspoken gods. They used blood because ink couldn't hold them. He walks toward the desk, running a gloved hand across the parchment walls. Every confession, every heresy, every miracle the church could not burn, they bled it onto paper instead. He stops beside you. And now, he says, tapping the open page, it wants to know your name. The ledger quivers. The ink ripples across the parchment like something alive waiting to swallow a word. You don't answer. You can't. The archivist studies your face for a long, quiet moment, then smiles, not cruelly, not kindly, just knowingly. It's all right, he murmurs. Names fade. The writing doesn't. He closes the book gently. The ink still glows faintly beneath the cover, pulsing like a heartbeat. When you look down at your hands again, your fingertips are clean. The quills have stopped moving. The air smells of dust again. The blood, the whispering, the movement, all gone. Except one thing. On the last desk by the door, A single fresh page lies flat, written in the same deep red script. The word has chosen. You leave the scriptorium. The key in your pocket has gone silent. But the sound of a slow heartbeat still lingers, somewhere deeper in the vaults below. The corridor narrows again, stone closing in like a throat. The walls sweat moisture, rivulets crawl down and vanish into hairline cracks beneath your feet. The air here tastes metallic, faintly sweet, faintly wrong. You walk slower now. The silence feels different, too still, like something waiting for you to breathe first so it can echo afterward. The light ahead changes color. Not the warm gold of candles or the sterile blue of hidden lamps. This is a red glow, faint and pulsing, like the heartbeat of the catacombs themselves. You turn the final corner. The room beyond is circular, like so many in this labyrinth, but smaller, closer. Every inch of wall is lined with niches, and in each niche stands a statue. Dozens of them. Some marble, some wood, some a mix of both. Saints, you think, or what's left of them. Their faces are cracked, eyes hollow, fingers missing, halos shattered. They lean forward ever so slightly, as though they'd been frozen mid-step. Dust has settled into their wounds. Some wear faint stains that look disturbingly like old blood. You walk among them. Their names are still carved into the plinths: Agatha, Sebastian, Dismas, Cecilia, but others are less familiar. Saints erased from calendars, struck from sermons. Each broken for a reason, each left here to be forgotten politely. And yet, there's a presence. You feel it the way you feel a draft in a sealed room, not seen, but undeniable. At the center of the chamber stands a single statue still intact. It's enormous, nearly touching the domed ceiling. The saint depicted kneels, head bowed, a heavy chain draped around his shoulders. His eyes are closed, but his mouth is slightly open, carved so delicately that you can see the suggestion of teeth behind stone lips. An inscription on the base reads, Sanctus Interdictus. The forbidden saint. You circle him slowly. The chain around his shoulders appears real, not sculpted, iron links eaten with rust. They run behind the statue and into the wall itself. A lock seals them there, half swallowed by the stone, its keyhole filled with centuries of dust. The air hums faintly again. You touch one of the chains, and feel it move. It's subtle, just a tremor, but unmistakable. The links shift under your fingers like a sleeping thing turning in its bed. You step back. The archivist's voice echoes faintly behind you, though you hadn't heard him enter. They called him the saint who listened too closely, he says. He heard the confessions no one dared speak, the ones meant for God alone. You turn. He's standing in the doorway again, hands folded, face unreadable. They built this chamber around him, he continues, to keep him quiet. He walks to the statue, lays a hand on its base. But stone remembers prayers better than men do. The air grows heavier. You realize the faint red light doesn't come from any visible lamp. It pulses softly from within the cracks of the statue itself, as if something alive beats beneath the marble. The archivist looks at you. Do you know why saints are broken? He asks softly. You shake your head. Because belief is heavier than flesh, he says. And sometimes, even holiness fractures under the weight. A low sound rolls through the chamber, not quite a groan, not quite a breath. The statues along the walls shiver, dust cascading from their shoulders. Their empty eyes gleam faintly red. The archivist steps back, calm as ever. When they built these catacombs, they thought they were burying heresy, he murmurs. But they were only burying voices. The red glow brightens, the chains tightening around the forbidden saint's shoulders. The hum becomes a slow, rhythmic pulse, vibrating through your feet, into your bones. And then a whisper, faint, ancient, coming from the statue's open mouth. At first, it's just breath. Then words form, brittle and broken, not forgotten. You freeze. The archivist closes his eyes, almost reverent. Every prayer leaves an echo, he says quietly, even the unanswered ones. The chains tremble. The red light flares once, then fades. The chamber returns to shadow. The silence that follows is total, a silence you can feel pressing against your skin. You look again at the statue. The mouth is closed now. The expression peaceful. The archivist exhales, a sound somewhere between exhaustion and relief. Come, he says softly. You've heard enough of the dead. It's time to meet the ones who never lived. He turns toward another door you hadn't noticed before, a narrow archway veiled by a curtain of iron beads. Behind it, faint blue light flickers like distant lightning. You follow him through. The beads clatter softly as they close behind you, sealing the saints and their whispers back into stone. The sound of the iron beads fades behind you, a final, faint clink, like a rosary dropped in water. The next hallway is narrow and cold. Colder than anything you've felt so far. The kind of cold that doesn't belong to temperature at all, but to absence. The air feels thinner, stretched, as though sound itself refuses to travel here. The archivist walks ahead of you, the hem of his robe whispering against the stone. His lantern casts long shadows that move too slowly to match his pace. You follow. You don't ask questions anymore. There's no need. He always answers before you can form them. At the end of the corridor waits a door made of bone-white wood. It's carved with small indentations, circles overlapping like ripples on water. The handle is a ring of tarnished gold. The archivist pauses before it, resting one hand against the surface. This is older than the church, he murmurs. Older than language. It remembers prayers that were never spoken. He pushes the door open. Inside, the light is dim and blue, the same hue that shimmered faintly in the vault of breath. The chamber is vast, yet feels intimate, like the inside of a sleeping mind. The walls are covered in alcoves, hundreds of them, each holding a small glass sphere suspended by thin wire. Within each sphere, something moves, faint lights, slow and uncertain, like distant stars seen through water. You step closer to one. The glass fogs slightly under your breath. Inside, you can almost see a shape. Small, unfinished. The outline of a human form. The archivist watches you. They called these anime infantes, he says softly. Souls that never reached the world. Lives unbreathed, names unspoken. He moves among the alcoves as though among tombstones. There are many ways to die, he continues, but there are only two ways never to be born, to be denied by the body or refused by heaven. He stops beside one of the spheres. The light within flickers weakly, then brightens at his presence, as if it recognizes him. This one, he says quietly, was once meant for a king. It waited 70 years before it was forgotten. You can't look away. Each sphere hums faintly, a tone so soft it feels like vibration rather than sound. Together, they form a chord of infinite sadness, a symphony of potential that never began. You notice some spheres are cracked. The light inside them has gone dark. The air around those alcoves is colder still. What happens to them? You ask before you can stop yourself. The archivist turns. His eyes catch the faint blue light, reflecting it like old glass. They wait, he says simply. Some are reborn. Some dissolve. Some remain. He gestures toward the far end of the room. There, on a raised platform, sits a massive orb unlike the rest. Its surface is opaque, its color shifting between blue and white, like milk stirred with moonlight. The air around it hums low and steady. That, he says, is the unclaimed. You climb the platform slowly. The hum deepens as you approach. You can feel it in your teeth, your bones. The sphere is the size of a man's chest, suspended by thick chains. Its surface ripples slightly, fluid though solid. When you stand directly before it, you hear something beneath the hum, a whisper, faint and fragmented, like wind moving through broken reeds. It's not words, not quite. Just sound yearning to become one. Listen long enough, says the archivist, and it will take your voice. That's how it grows. You step back instinctively. The whisper stops. The light inside the orb steadies, then pulses once, almost like acknowledgement. The archivist rests a hand on it. They say God hears every prayer, he murmurs. But he never said who else was listening. He withdraws his hand, turns toward you. The living archives await. You glance one last time at the spheres, at all those quiet, unborn lights flickering in their glass prisons, and something strange passes through you. Not pity, not fear, just a sense that each of them might once have dreamed of being you. You follow the archivist toward another archway, this one lined with gold leaf that's flaking away like old skin. Beyond it, you glimpse shelves again, endless rows of them. Books, scrolls, and something else. Something that moves between the stacks. The archivist steps aside, gesturing for you to enter first. These, he says softly, are the ones who never forgot how to write back. You hesitate, one hand on the frame, feeling the faint hum of the unborn still vibrating through the air. Then you step through. The air changes again, warmer now, smelling faintly of ink, fire, and something human. Behind you, the door of bone closes soundlessly. The first thing you notice is movement. Not from the archivist, he stands still beside the doorway, but from the shelves. Rows upon rows of them, towering into the dark like the ribs of a giant creature. They shudder slightly as though breathing. Each shelf is packed with books of every kind, leather-bound, wooden, even a few wrapped in thin metal sheets that hum faintly in the air. None of them have titles. Some are half open, pages fluttering though there's no wind. Others drip with what looks like melted wax, or maybe old glue. It's hard to tell in this light. The glow here comes not from lamps or torches but from the books themselves. Their pages emit a dull gold shimmer, like candlelight trapped beneath skin. The light fades and returns, in rhythm, 1,000 slow, steady heartbeats made of paper. The archivist gestures for you to walk ahead. This, he says, voice soft as dust, is the living archive. Every book writes itself, recording what the church cannot control: thought, doubt, desire, memory. The kind of history that refuses to die. You step between the shelves. The sound changes instantly. Whispers. Thousands of them, just below hearing. You realize each book murmurs faintly to itself, sentences forming and dissolving as though spoken in dreams. You catch fragments, names, prayers, unfinished confessions, lines of poetry that feel both ancient and new. The air is thick with it. Heavy, like breathing someone else's thoughts. You stop before a book that's slightly ajar. Its pages turn slowly, then freeze on one. Words appear in neat black ink, writing themselves as you watch. The stranger enters. The stranger listens. The page listens back. You look around sharply, half expecting a trick. The archivist only smiles faintly. It recognizes presence, he says. Every visitor becomes an author, whether they mean to or not. You close the book. The whispering around you rises for a moment, as though the other volumes disapprove, then settles again into a quiet rustle. You walk deeper. The light fades gradually until it feels like walking through amber. Some books pulse faster than others. The newly written, perhaps. A few are cold, their light gone completely, the pages stiff and dry. At one corner, you find a writing desk, small, cluttered, ancient. A quill lies in a pool of black ink that never seems to dry. The parchment on the desk is blank except for one faint line scrawled near the top. Everything written here will happen again. You glance back at the archivist. He's watching you closely now, hands clasped behind his back. This place doesn't store history, he murmurs. It predicts it. Each page begins blank and fills with what will soon be remembered. Then it forgets again. You look down. The quill begins to move, scratching by itself. The words form slowly, deliberate, elegant. The visitor looks down at the page and reads. You swallow. The ink continues flowing. They realize the writing knows their breath, their heartbeat, the rhythm of their steps. The quill pauses, then dips into the ink again. You feel your pulse quicken and the quill follows, mirroring it, faster, faster, until the sound of it matches your heartbeat perfectly. You step back. The quill stops. The parchment curls slightly at the edges, as if exhaling. The archivist approaches, resting a hand on the desk. This is what the Vatican feared most, he says. A library that doesn't obey the writer. He traces one finger through the spilled ink, and for a moment, the surface ripples like watered. They tried to seal it, to silence it, he continues. But words, once written, never truly die. They just change authors. He looks at you. And now it's yours. You want to protest, to ask what he means, but your voice doesn't come. It's not that you can't speak. It's that the library is already speaking for you. You hear your own words whispered faintly from a dozen shelves around you, repeated, rewritten, distorted. It's mine. It's mine. It's mine. The air trembles. The shelves shift. Dozens of books slide out slightly, as though leaning toward you. Pages flutter open, revealing blank white paper. Waiting. The archivist steps back into the shadows, his voice low. Every keeper leaves a mark. Every mark becomes a story. Every story needs an ending. The whispering grows louder, insistent now, rhythmic. You back away slowly, your reflection flickering in the glossy covers, each one a different version of you. Older, younger, silent, screaming. Then, all at once, the whispering stops. The light dims to black. Only one book remains open. You can see the final line being written, faint in gold. The visitor leaves. But the writing stays. You exhale. The air tastes of dust and ink and something faintly metallic, familiar by now. You turn toward the exit. As you step through the archway, the whisper resumes, quieter this time, almost gentle. The shelves shift back into stillness. The light steadies. You don't look back. Behind you, a single page turns itself. The next corridor is quiet, too quiet. After the murmuring madness of the living library, this silence feels artificial, almost engineered. The archivist doesn't speak this time. He simply gestures forward, the faint light of his lantern drawing a shaky path across the floor. You walk until the walls begin to change. The rough stone becomes smooth, dark, reflective. It starts subtly, a shimmer here, a reflection there, until you realize the walls are no longer walls at all. They're mirrors. You stop walking. Because now, it isn't just your reflection looking back. There are others. They appear faintly, like smoke trapped in glass, silhouettes of people standing where you stand, moving when you move, but not you. They linger half a beat too late. Their expressions don't match yours. One smiles faintly when you don't. Another tilts its head, studying you like prey. "Welcome," says the archivist, his voice echoing oddly, as if the mirrors themselves are repeating him, to the room of mirrors that forget. You glance around, floor, ceiling, every surface gleaming. The reflections stretch endlessly, thousands of you reflected into infinity, each slightly different. The air smells faintly of oil and dust, and something colder underneath. Every pope, every priest, every soul who's walked beneath the basilica has left their reflection here, the archivist explains. But reflections, like memories, do not stay loyal forever. They begin to wander. You take a step closer to one of the mirrors. Your reflection stares back, eyes hollow, skin pale under the flickering light. You raise your hand. It does the same, but slower. The fingertips almost touch. And then, your reflection smiles. You don't. The archivist's voice drifts through the air again. They remember more than the living, but less than the dead. The mirror ripples. The face behind it, your face, changes slightly. The nose thinner. The eyes older. A face that might be yours in another life. Or another century. You pull your hand back. The reflection stays frozen, still reaching toward the glass. They call this room the confessional that listens both ways, the archivist continues. It doesn't reflect who you are. It shows who you were. And who you were meant to be. He walks past you, his reflection splitting into 100 shadowed forms that move like ghosts across the mirrored floor. But there's a cost, he adds quietly. Each glance leaves a fragment of the soul behind. Eventually, the mirrors know you better than you know yourself. You watch as the nearest reflection turns its head slightly, independent now, its gaze flicking past you toward the archivist. Its lips move soundlessly. You lean closer. You think you can make out the shape of the word, stay. The light in the mirrors flickers. For a moment, you see faces overlapping, monks, cardinals, children, soldiers, all staring out from their panes, layer upon layer. Some reach toward you. Some turn away. Some whisper things too low to understand. The archivist stops near the center of the room. The floor there is cracked, a thin, jagged line running through one of the mirror tiles. He kneels beside it, brushing his fingers along the edge. "This one broke," he says softly. "A soul escaped once. They never found where it went." You can't tell if he's joking. He doesn't sound like he is. He stands and faces you. "There is something you must do now. Look at your reflection, truly look, and ask it a question you've never dared to ask yourself." You hesitate, but his tone leaves no room for refusal. You face the mirror. Your reflection stands still, waiting. The room is silent. You breathe once, twice, and then you whisper the question, the one that's lived too long behind your teeth. "Why am I here?" Your reflection blinks. Then it opens its mouth. No sound emerges, but the answer writes itself across the mirror's surface in thin, frost-like letters. Because you never stopped listening. The words linger for a heartbeat, then fade. The reflection exhales, a faint cloud of mist blooming against the glass. You step back, heart heavy, pulse steady. The archivist nods once. "It remembers now," he murmurs. "You may go." You take a step toward the exit. But as you turn, you catch a glimpse of the mirror again, and your reflection doesn't move. It stays standing perfectly still, watching you leave. You don't turn back. You don't have to. You already know it's still there, waiting. Behind you, a faint tapping begins. One hand against the glass, soft but persistent. Then silence. You step through the doorway into the next corridor, where the air is once again stone cold and dry. The archivist follows, closing the mirrored door behind him. "Some things," he says softly, "should never remember." And somewhere behind that door, 1,000 forgotten faces continue to watch. Reflections without a body, memories without a name. You walk for what feels like hours. The corridor winds downward, spiraling like a vein into the earth. The deeper you go, the thicker the air becomes, heavy with moisture and something else, something faintly metallic. The light from the archivist's lantern seems to shrink, swallowed by the dark. When the floor finally levels, you hear it, a sound so soft you almost mistake it for breathing. A hum, low and distant, rising and falling like the tide. The archivist stops before a set of tall, rusted gates. The iron bars are twisted, shaped like vines climbing upward toward nothing. Beneath the rust, you can see faint inscriptions, names. Hundreds of them. Each one carved shallowly, hurriedly, as if the writer didn't have time to finish before being silenced. "This," he says, resting one hand on the gate, "is the choir of the nameless. No tombstones, no epitaphs. Just voices." He pushes the gate open. The sound swells immediately, thousands of tones woven together, too many to distinguish, too sorrowful to ignore. It's not music. Not quite. It's what music would sound like if it forgot what joy was. Inside, the chamber opens into vastness. You can't see the ceiling, only darkness pierced by faint shafts of blue light filtering from above. The walls glisten with condensation. Pools of water cover the floor, reflecting the dim light like shattered mirrors. And in the water, shapes, dozens, maybe hundreds, suspended just below the surface. Pale outlines of faces. Some serene, some twisted mid-breath. Each one humming softly, endlessly. You step closer to the edge. The surface ripples slightly, as if disturbed from below. The nearest face rises an inch toward you, not emerging, not alive, but aware. Its mouth opens. The sound that comes out isn't a word. It's a tone, pure and low, resonating through your chest like a pulse. The archivist stands beside you, unmoving. "They are the unburied," he says quietly. "Those who served, suffered, vanished. The nameless dead who built what others took credit for. Their bodies were never blessed, but their voices refused to fade." You look again at the water. The faces shift slowly, drifting in concentric circles around the center of the chamber where the hum is loudest. You realize they're not simply singing, they're holding the same note. A single, unbroken sound. "How long?" you ask. The archivist glances down. Since the basilica began to rise, he says, they were buried beneath the stones they carved. The Vatican built above them. The church sings over its own silence. You step back from the pool. The sound grows louder, the vibrations rippling through the soles of your feet. The water begins to move faster, forming a slow whirlpool in the center. Something dark stirs below, a shadow shifting in the depths. What is that? You whisper. The archivist doesn't answer. He just watches as the shadow turns. The faces around the pool stop moving. The harmony breaks. A single note, high, piercing, cuts through the air. The water trembles. Then the whispering begins. Not the song, not the hum. Actual words now, fractured and overlapping. You can't understand most of them, but a few rise above the rest, clear and direct. Listen. Remember. Say our names. You stumble back, heart pounding. The voices follow, echoing from the walls. Each time you breathe, more whispers fill your ears, not spoken, but breathe directly into your thoughts. The archivist speaks over the noise, his voice steadied. They want to be remembered. But memory is a kind of resurrection. And resurrection is forbidden. The whirlpool slows. The faces sink again, one by one. The hum returns, softer now, mournful. The chamber quiets until the only sound is dripping water. The archivist turns toward the gate. Come, he says. The choir sleeps again. Best not to stay when they dream. You follow, though the sound clings to you. A faint vibration beneath your skin, humming where your heartbeat should be. When you step past the gate, the iron bars close themselves with a hollow clang. The archivist exhales. They never forget who listens, he murmurs. As you climb the stairs back toward the light, you hear one final whisper rise from the depths, a name. Your name. Then silence. You don't ask how it knows. You don't want to know. The archivist walks ahead, lantern swaying. Next, he says softly, you'll see where the Vatican hides the things even God refused to keep. You don't reply. You just keep walking. The air changes again. Not colder this time, heavier. Like walking through a dream that's starting to remember itself. The archivist's lantern flickers once, twice, before settling into a steady glow. The walls here aren't stone anymore. They're carved bone. Smooth, ivory white, polished by centuries of touch. You run your hand along the surface as you walk. It's warm. That shouldn't be possible. This is the end of the lower descent, the archivist says softly, his voice echoing like a prayer in a tomb. You've seen what they preserved. Now, you'll see what they couldn't bear to. The corridor opens into a vast chamber lined with black iron vaults. Each one is sealed with wax and stamped with the sigil of the papal seal, crossed keys, a crown, a sword. Some are labeled in Latin. Others bear no name at all. A faint hum fills the air, not mechanical, not electrical. Organic. Almost like breathing. You approach the nearest vault. The wax seal is cracked. The door hangs slightly open. Inside, something glows faintly blue. You lean closer and see a small reliquary, silver, ornate, and very wrong. It's shaped like a heart, but not human. The chambers are twisted, folded upon themselves like coral. The archivist's voice follows behind you. That one came from a saint who wasn't meant to exist, he says. Declared holy, then erased when her miracles began asking too many questions. Her relics were never buried, only hidden. You look again at the reliquary. The glow pulses once, faint but deliberate. Like a heartbeat. You close the vault door. The hum quiets slightly. The archivist moves toward another vault, this one taller than the rest. Here, he says, lies the finger of St. Peter, or one of them at least. The church collected more than 20 over the centuries. The truth became inconvenient. He smiles faintly, not humor, just resignation. They kept the extras here. Easier than admitting mistakes. You can't help but glance at the other vaults now. Some are small, the size of a chest. Others are as large as coffins. Each one hums at a slightly different pitch, creating a dissonant chord that fills the chamber like a low, constant storm. You stop before one vault that's been sealed in red wax rather than black. The seal bears no sigil. Only a single word burned into the metal, negatum. You ask what it means. The archivist's expression darkens. Denied, he says. Things that were never meant to be believed. Relics of false saints. Artifacts of unapproved divinity. He hesitates, then continues quietly, sometimes, faith creates its own monsters. You reach for the vault's handle. The archivist doesn't stop you, but he doesn't move either. You pull gently. The metal is cold, almost wet. The door opens with a soft sigh. Inside lies a shrouded figure, small, almost childlike. The cloth is ancient, yellowed, soaked with age. Beneath it something shifts. Not alive. But not entirely dead either. You step out. The archivist closes the door slowly, pressing his palm against the red seal until it cools and hardens again. Denied miracles, he says, don't fade. They just wait for someone to look. You walk in silence now, deeper among the vaults. You see more strange things. A crown made of thorns that isn't thorns at all but veins. A vial of liquid that reflects faces you don't recognize. A crucifix that bleeds rust instead of blood. These, the archivist murmurs, are the proofs of contradiction. Every age of faith leaves behind the things it can't explain. This room is full of those explanations. He stops near the far wall. There, a massive iron door stands half buried in dust. The hinges are fused, the lock covered in wax so thick it looks like melted stone. Above it, a phrase carved deep into the bone wall. Non-redimitor. You ask what it means. The archivist lowers his gaze. It means, he says slowly, it will not be redeemed. The hum in the chamber grows louder now, a single, rising tone. The air begins to vibrate. The lantern flickers wildly, shadows stretching long across the bone walls. Something behind the sealed door moves. Just once, a slow, deliberate shift, like something turning in its sleep. The archivist steps back, face pale in the light. It wakes sometimes, he whispers, when the church forgets why it buried it. You take another step back. The hum stops. The silence that follows is absolute. The archivist exhales. You've seen enough for tonight. You want to agree. You really do. But as you turn toward the exit, you notice one vault, smaller than the rest, standing open. Inside, a single parchment rests on a cushion. The ink still wet, the handwriting unmistakable. It's yours. The words read, "The visitor has found what was denied." You stare, breath shallow. The ink ripples once, and then the parchment folds itself closed. The archivist's voice comes from behind you, almost kind. "Congratulations," he says softly. "You've become a relic." You climb upward again. The air thins, and for the first time in what feels like hours, you see light that isn't artificial. It filters down in fractured beams, soft, colored, trembling like water, through something above you. When you emerge, you're standing beneath a vaulted ceiling made entirely of stained glass. It stretches across the chamber like the skin of a sleeping god, intricate, luminous, almost alive. Each panel depicts a different scene, saints, angels, battles, miracles. But there's something wrong with them. The faces. They move. Not enough to notice at first. A twitch of the mouth, the blink of an eye, a shift in expression that's gone by the time you focused. The archivist steps beside you, his lantern dim now, unnecessary. "The light here isn't sunlight," he says. "It's reflection." These windows were made from ground gemstones, mixed with relic dust and the ashes of confession. You stare upward. The figures look down at you from their colorful prisons, their eyes glinting faintly. The light changes as they do. Red deepens to crimson, blue melts into bruised violet. They were designed to watch, the archivist continues softly. Not just to illuminate. Every cathedral has windows that tell stories. These tell secrets. You step closer to one of the panels. It shows a familiar scene, the crucifixion. But something's off. The figure on the cross isn't Christ. Someone else. You can't tell who, but the face looks half-formed, as if unfinished or erased. The eyes are open, though, and they're looking at you. You take another step forward. The glass trembles slightly, like it's breathing. Your reflection flickers across its surface, then disappears. You're not reflected anymore. You're seen. The archivist's voice comes from somewhere behind you, barely above a whispered. The artisans believed that truth could be trapped in color. Every pane here holds a confession, every face a witness. But over time, the glass began remembering too much. He gestures toward another window, this one fractured by hairline cracks that glisten like veins. Through it, you can see an image of a kneeling monk, his mouth open in silent prayer. Only the prayer doesn't look silent. The glass has warped his lips into a scream. You feel watched from every direction now. The light grows warmer, almost feverish. The colors pulse faintly, syncing with your heartbeat. You whisper, "They're alive." The archivist nods. In a way, every sinner who confessed beneath these windows left a trace. Words turned to heat, heat to light. The glass absorbed it, and now it sees as clearly as it shines. You take a slow step backward. The colors shift again, blue to red, red to gold, until the figure in the crucifixion window no longer looks like a stranger. It looks like you. Eyes open, watching yourself from above. The archivist sighs quietly. You see why they closed this hall. The church preaches that only God sees all. But sometimes his walls do too. A faint cracking sound interrupts him. You glance up. A thin fracture runs across the nearest pane, spreading, branching like lightning. The face of a saint distorts. The painted mouth opens wider. You swear you hear it inhale. Then, a whispered, so faint it could be the shifting of air, or something deeper. Confess. You look toward the archivist, but he's already retreating toward the far doorway. Don't answer, he says quickly, voice low. Once you speak, they remember your tone, your breath, your shape. You'll never walk in sunlight again without being seen. The glass hums now, vibrating faintly in its lead frames. Each window glows brighter, colors deepening to blood red and gold. The faces turn, slowly, one by one. Saints, angels, martyrs, all looking down at you. The hum rises, blending into something like a distant choir. You move toward the exit, each step echoing like a heartbeat through the glass. The light flickers faster, sharper. By the time you reach the threshold, the entire ceiling seems to be breathing in unison. The archivist holds the door open. Go, he says simply. You step through, and the sound cuts off instantly. No hum. No light. Just silence. Behind you, the last pane of glass catches a sliver of lantern glow. For a moment, your reflection reappears, pale, distant, and smiling faintly. Then the light dies. The archivist closes the door behind you. They say the saints watch over the faithful, he murmurs. But no one ever said from where. You stand there for a long moment, feeling the faint warmth of colored light still on your skin. And deep inside the silence, you can still hear it, the whisper that never quite ends. Confess. The passage narrows again. A return to stone, to shadow, to air that tastes of iron and candle smoke. You can still feel the ghost of color on your skin from the stained glass chamber, though down here, light doesn't exist. Only reflection. The archivist's lantern is barely enough to pierce the dark. After a long descent, the floor evens out. You've arrived in another vast space, the kind that wasn't built, but dug. The air hums softly, like a breath too deep to belong to one person. This is the crypt of the sleeping cardinals. You know it instinctively, the same way one recognizes a heartbeat before hearing it. Rows of marble coffins stretch outward into the dark, hundreds of them, identical in shape but not in silence. Some rest quietly sealed. Others vibrate faintly, as if something inside still stirs. The smell is thick here. Incense, mildew, and old fabric. Time distilled into air. The archivist speaks quietly, as if afraid to wake them. They called this place Domus Mutorum, the house of the silent ones. Cardinals who spoke too much truth were laid here, under vows of eternal rest. But vows, as you've seen, are not always kept. You step closer to one of the sarcophagi. The lid bears a Latin inscription, Dormio, sed non tessio. You ask what it means. The archivist glances at you. I sleep, but I do not stay silent. He moves slowly between the coffins, brushing his hand along the marble as if greeting old friends. They used to dream, he says. That was the problem. When a man of faith dreams, he might see something he shouldn't. You rest your hand on a nearby coffin. It's warm. Beneath your palm, there's movement, subtle but unmistakable. A slow rise and fall, like breathing through stone. You step back. The archivist nods, unsurprised. They're not alive, he murmurs. But they're not gone either. The Vatican learned to preserve more than just bodies. Memory can be embalmed too. He gestures toward the far wall, where massive black candles burn with colorless flame. Between them, a marble statue of an angel kneels, its wings folded, its eyes covered by a strip of lead. A single chain runs from the angel's hands to the floor, ending at a locked iron grate. Their dreams are stored below, he says. You'll hear them soon. He steps to the grate and pulls a lever hidden in the wall. The chains tighten with a heavy groan. The sound echoes, rolling through the crypt like thunder in a tomb. And then, faintly, the murmuring begins. It comes from beneath the floor. Dozens of voices, whispering prayers in languages older than Latin. The sound overlaps, builds, then fades again, rhythmic, hypnotic, almost peaceful. You crouch beside the grate. The air rising through it is warm and wet. It smells like wax and copper. The whispers change, faster now, no longer prayers but fragments, memories, perhaps. You hear the words, forbidden, truth, unseen. Then, suddenly, a voice speaks clearly, not from below, but beside you. Do you dream too? You freeze. The archivist doesn't react. The voice repeats, softer this time, from within the coffin you'd touched earlier. Do you dream too? You turn slowly. The marble lid has shifted slightly, less than a finger's width. A faint breath escapes through the crack, warm, human, impossibly alive. The archivist steps between you and the coffin, one hand raised. Do not answer, he says quietly. They speak to be remembered. Once you answer, you become part of the memory. The whispering continues, a chorus of low voices filling the crypta. Some laugh softly. Others weep. One sings, tuneless and childlike, repeating the same phrase over and over, we saw the light beneath the ground. The archivist closes the grate again. The sound muffles instantly, as though the crypt exhales in disappointment. Turns to you. They dream of daylight, he says. Even now. Centuries later. You glance back at the rows of coffins, at the faint fog rising from their seams, at the subtle pulse of light beneath the marbled. They can't rest, you ask. The archivist shakes his head. Rest requires forgetting. And forgetting is forbidden. You follow him toward the far side of the crypt, where a narrow door waits, half hidden in shadow. He pauses before opening it. When we die, he says softly, we become memory. When they died, they became warning. He pushes the door open. A faint blue light spills through the crack, washing over the marble and the silent stone faces. The whispering stops. The crypt falls perfectly still. You step through into the next passage, and behind you, one of the coffins exhales again, slow, steady, and unmistakably human. The archivist closes the door, voice a whisper now. They still pray, he says. But no one's been listening for a very long time. You don't notice the smell at first. It's faint, parchment, dust, and something faintly sweet, like decaying flowers. But the deeper you go, the thicker it becomes, until the air tastes like old ink and candle soot. The corridor opens into a hall that seems impossibly large. Shelves rise from floor to ceiling, not wooden, but carved directly from the stone. And upon those shelves, thousands of paper figures stand upright. Each is the size of a hand. Each is a saint. They aren't painted, though. They're written. Every figure is covered in lines of delicate script, prayers, confessions, whole sermons folded into the shape of human devotion. Their faces are drawn from words, not inked. Eyes made of single letters, hands composed of the phrase, ora pro nobis. It's beautiful in the way silence sometimes is, almost holy, almost wrong. The archivist lowers his lantern. This is where faith was copied, he murmurs. When the church ran out of saints to canonize, they made new ones, from paper, from ink, from gilt. You step closer. The figures shimmer faintly in the lamplight. Each one is hollow in the center, like origami folded around air. And from inside them, there's a sound, faint and brittle, like the turning of pages in another room. You reach out to touch one, and the archivist's hand shoots out to stop you. Careful, he says, almost a whisper. They remember their words. He gestures toward the nearest road. These were written by penitents. Each figure a prayer for forgiveness. The ones that were accepted turned pale and silent. The ones that weren't. He trails off. You look closer. Some of the paper saints are darker, the script burned into them like scars. Their folded heads are bowed, their hands clenched tight. A few tremble slightly, as if disturbed by wind that isn't there. The archivist continues, voice loaded. The rejected ones learned to pray back. Words, once spoken, don't die. They only wait. You can hear it now, faint whispers curling between the shelves. Some are reciting Latin prayers, others murmur names. A few sound like they're weeping. The archivist begins walking between the rows, the lanterns glow trembling on the walls. As he passes, the nearest figures bow their heads, a motion too perfect to be accidental. You follow cautiously, your footsteps muffled by a carpet of fallen paper, soft as ash. He stops before a pedestal at the center of the hall. Upon it stands a single, unfolded sheet, larger than the rest, yellowed with age. The ink is still wet. Every era has its saint, the archivist says quietly. This one was written in 1632 by a man who tried to write forgiveness for himself. He failed. The letters pulse faintly, as if reacting to your presence. The words are illegible, half Latin, half something else, but the rhythm is unmistakable. It isn't a prayer. It's a heartbeat. You look around. The paper saints have turned toward you now. Not moving exactly, just facing you, like trees bending toward the wind. Their tiny eyes shimmer with reflected ink. Don't read aloud, the archivist warns. Not unless you want to be written. You don't answer. The air shifts. A page flutters loose from one of the shelves, landing at your feet. It's blank, completely empty, no ink, no folds. The archivist kneels and picks it up with trembling fingers. They've chosen, he says softly. You ask what that means, though you already know. He looks at you with a strange kind of pity. When they find someone who still believes in words, they try to fill them. You look back at the shelves. Every saint has turned now, silent, still, waiting. The faint fluttering sound builds, becomes a low rustle, like breath across paper. The blank sheet in the archivist's hand curls upward, as though reaching. He slips it into his coat. We should go, he says, voice sharp now. They've begun to copy. You glance down at your hand. There's a smear of black ink across your skin, small, almost invisible. It looks like writing. You rub it away, but it doesn't come off. As you follow the archivist toward the next door, the whispering grows louder, 1,000 voices reciting the same sentence over and over. All words deserve bodies. You don't look back. But as you step into the next hall, you swear you feel a paper fingertip brush your shoulder, light, polite, and final. You don't notice the smell at first. It's faint, parchment, dust, and something faintly sweet, like decaying flowers. But the deeper you go, the thicker it becomes, until the air tastes like old ink and candle soot. The corridor opens into a hall that seems impossibly large. Shelves rise from floor to ceiling, not wooden, but carved directly from the stone. And upon those shelves, thousands of paper figures stand upright. Each is the size of a hand. Each is a saint. They aren't painted, though. They're written. Every figure is covered in lines of delicate script, prayers, confessions, whole sermons folded into the shape of human devotion. Their faces are drawn from words, not inked. Eyes made of single letters, hands composed of the phrase, ora pro nobis. It's beautiful in the way silence sometimes is, almost holy, almost wrong. The archivist lowers his lantern. This is where faith was copied, he murmurs. When the church ran out of saints to canonize, they made new ones, from paper, from ink, from guilt. You step closer. The figures shimmer faintly in the lamplight. Each one is hollow in the center, like origami folded around air. And from inside them, there's a sound, faint and brittled, like the turning of pages in another room. You reach out to touch one, and the archivist's hand shoots out to stop you. Careful, he says, almost a whisper. They remember their words. He gestures toward the nearest road. These were written by penitents. Each figure a prayer for forgiveness. The ones that were accepted turned pale and silent. The ones that weren't. He trails off. You look closer. Some of the paper saints are darker, the script burned into them like scars. Their folded heads are bowed, their hands clenched tight. A few tremble slightly, as if disturbed by wind that isn't there. The archivist continues, voice loaded. The rejected ones learned to pray back. Words, once spoken, don't die. They only wait. You can hear it now, faint whispers curling between the shelves. Some are reciting Latin prayers, others murmur names. A few sound like they're weeping. The archivist begins walking between the rows, the lanterns glow trembling on the walls. As he passes, the nearest figures bow their heads, a motion too perfect to be accidental. You follow cautiously, your footsteps muffled by a carpet of fallen paper, soft as ash. He stops before a pedestal at the center of the hall. Upon it stands a single, unfolded sheet, larger than the rest, yellowed with age. The ink is still wet. Every era has its saint, the archivist says quietly. This one was written in 1632 by a man who tried to write forgiveness for himself. He failed. The letters pulse faintly, as if reacting to your presence. The words are illegible, half Latin, half something else, but the rhythm is unmistakable. It isn't a prayer. It's a heartbeat. You look around. The paper saints have turned toward you now. Not moving exactly, just facing you, like trees bending toward the wind. Their tiny eyes shimmer with reflected ink. Don't read aloud, the archivist warns. Not unless you want to be written. You don't answer. The air shifts. A page flutters loose from one of the shelves, landing at your feet. It's blank, completely empty, no ink, no folds. The archivist kneels and picks it up with trembling fingers. They've chosen, he says softly. You ask what that means, though you already know. He looks at you with a strange kind of pity. When they find someone who still believes in words, they try to fill them. You look back at the shelves. Every saint has turned now, silent, still, waiting. The faint fluttering sound builds, becomes a low rustle, like breath across paper. The blank sheet in the archivist's hand curls upward, as though reaching. He slips it into his coat. We should go, he says, voice sharp now. They've begun to copy. You glance down at your hand. There's a smear of black ink across your skin, small, almost invisible. It looks like writing. You rub it away, but it doesn't come off. As you follow the archivist toward the next door, the whispering grows louder, 1,000 voices reciting the same sentence over and over. All words deserve bodies. You don't look back. But as you step into the next hall, you swear you feel a paper fingertip brush your shoulder, light, polite, and final. You emerge into the next passage, and the air feels different. Thinner, sharp, like cold metal left too long in the dark. You taste iron again, but this time it's cleaner, almost electric. The corridor widens slowly until you find yourself standing before a massive iron gate. Beyond it, the air flickers faintly, as though light itself has learned to breathe. The archivist unlocks it with a key so old it looks half melted. This, he murmurs, is where heaven was studied by candlelight. He pushes the gate open. Inside, there's no ceiling, just blackness stretching upward forever. And hanging in that darkness, suspended by threads of wire and glass, are thousands of small lights. They hover at different heights, pulsing faintly, white, blue, gold, as though stars have been trapped and forgotten beneath the earth. You take a slow step forward. The sound your foot makes echoes softly, swallowed by the vastness. It's beautiful and wrong. The Hall of Caged Stars, the Archivist says, built by astronomer priests in the 15th century. Each light represents a soul. Or at least, that's what they hoped. You look closer, Dot. They aren't stars at all. They're small glass spheres, no bigger than an apple, each containing something glowing and restless. Some shimmer gently, peaceful. Dot. Others flicker violently, like they're trying to escape. The Archivist raises his lantern. They said the light of creation could be captured. A divine spark. But the spark didn't like being kept. He stops before one of the orbs. Inside it, a faint shape moves, not light, but shadowed. It shifts, slow and liquid, brushing the glass from the inside. The glow around it pulses faster, almost like a heartbeat. You ask what's inside. He hesitates. Whatever was left after faith was measured. You don't know what that means. But as you walk deeper into the hall, the air begins to hum, faintly at first, then louder. Each orb emits a different tone, high or low, and together they form something like music. It isn't beautiful. It's heavy, vibrating through your ribs, through the marrow of your teeth. The Archivist closes his eyes. They call it the choir of the kept. The sound of belief with nowhere to go. You tilt your head back, trying to see the top of the chamber, but the stars keep going, layer upon layer of faint light. You realize they're moving. Slowly rotating, like constellations turned inside out. You whisper, "It's alive." He nods. It listens. Every confession, every whispered prayer. The air brings them here. The church needed somewhere to store what couldn't be forgiven. You stop beside one of the orbs that glows brighter than the rest. Something within it stirs, a flicker of movement that almost forms a hand. It presses lightly against the glass, and for an instant, the glow dims as though it's touching you back. You step away quickly. The Archivist doesn't move. His eyes stay fixed on the ceiling. They say if you speak here, he murmurs, the lights will echo your words long after you've gone. You test it. A whisper, "Hello." The nearest orbs tremble. A few pulses of faint light ripple outward, slow at first, then faster. Seconds later, you hear it, your own voice, return to you, but wronged. Stretched, distorted, half a note too low. It sounds like someone else trying to imitate you. You shiver. The Archivist lowers his lantern again. "Now it remembers you," he says softly. "You've joined the choir." He walks on. You follow. The hum grows louder. Somewhere behind you, one of the orbs cracks, a faint pop, like distant glass. The light inside escapes, streaking upward into the blackness, gone in an instant. The Archivist sighs. They escape sometimes. The Vatican used to call them miracles. But they're just memories finding their way home. You look back once more. Thousands of tiny lights pulse faintly, breathing in rhythm. Each one a secret, each one a confession too bright to be spoken aloud. The Archivist pauses at the far exit, his silhouette framed by the glow of 1,000 captive stars. He glances at you over his shoulder. "Remember what you've seen here," he says. "It's how heaven looks when it forgets itself." Then he opens the next door. The hum fades. The air goes cold again. You step through, and for a moment, just before the door closes, you hear your own voice echo softly from the darkness behind you. "Hello." The door closes behind you with the soft finality of a heartbeat. For a moment, there's only silence. Then, a faint metallic click, and the sound of glass sighing somewhere in the dark. You raise your eyes. It's a library, but not one meant for reading. The walls are lined with mirrors instead of shelves, stretching from floor to ceiling, each framed in tarnished gold. There must be hundreds of them, reflecting the lantern light into 1,000 broken shards. Each mirror is slightly different, warped, tinted, some fogged by age, others sharp enough to cut. The Archivist speaks softly beside you. This is where knowledge turned inward. He walks slowly, his reflection multiplying endlessly in the glass. You've heard of the Vatican Library, of course, manuscripts, codices, forbidden texts. But what most don't know is that there's another library beneath it, one that remembers only what has been forgotten. You move closer to one of the mirrors. Your reflection looks back, pale, tired, a little distorted. But when you tilt your head, the reflection doesn't move with you. It lags behind, like it's thinking about it first. If you step back, they aren't mirrors, the archivist says. They're copies. Each one holds the memory of a book, a scholar, a thought erased from history. The church found it safer to reflect knowledge than to destroy it. He stops before a large, circular mirror at the center of the room. It's blackened, smooth as still water. No reflection at all. This one, he whispers, is for everything they couldn't bear to see, even in reflection. The air hums faintly now, like the sound of bees trapped in glass. All around you, the mirrors begin to shimmer, faint images rippling across their surfaces. You catch glimpses, handwritten letters, sketches of constellations, a face you think you recognize but can't place. The archivist takes a step back. They awaken when someone who remembers enters. Even a little remembering is dangerous here. You turn, and the mirror beside you ripples like disturbed water. Your reflection reaches out a hand, not quite matching yours. The fingers are longer. The eyes are older. It smiles faintly, and then the image flickers, replaced by something else. A room full of candlelight. A figure at a desk, writing. Ink spilling across parchment. The smell of wax and dust. Then it's gone. The archivist's voice is barely audible now. They record not what you've done, but what you almost did. You look around. Every mirror is shifting, scenes unfolding, moments replaying, possibilities collapsing into silence. One shows a monk burning a book. Another shows him hesitating. Another shows him hiding it behind a wall. Every reflection, the archivist murmurs, is a choice that wasn't made. That's what knowledge really is, everything we might have done differently. You stare into one of the mirrors directly ahead. This one doesn't show anyone else. It shows you. But not as you are now. You're older. Or younger. Or both. It's hard to tell. Your reflection looks tired, but its eyes are calmed. It raises a hand, slowly, and points upward. There's a faint sound above you, glass shifting, a slow, steady crack like ice breaking. You look up. The ceiling is made of mirrored panels too, though you hadn't noticed before. They're vibrating now, reflecting hundreds of copies of you, each one slightly different, standing at different angles, in different poses. Some looking back at you. Some looking away. Don't look too long, the archivist says quickly. They're curious. You blink, tearing your gaze away. When you look again, your reflection in the nearest mirror is gone. Only the room remains. Only him. And hundreds of empty mirrors that now face you. The archivist retrieves his lantern. They say every reflection that disappears walks somewhere else, he says softly. That's how the library grows. You move toward the exit, heart steady but heavy. As you reach the threshold, something catches your eye, a faint shimmer on the floor. A shard of broken mirror. It shows a reflection of the room, but the archivist isn't in it. Only you. And you're smiling. You drop the shard. It doesn't make a sound when it hits the ground. The archivist opens the next door. The further we go, he murmurs, the more we stop seeing what's real. You don't reply. The mirrors behind you whisper faintly as the door closes, voices blending into one another, all speaking the same word. Remember. You step through the next doorway, and the air immediately feels heavier, warmer, almost wet, as though you've walked into lungs that forgot how to exhale. Your footsteps echo faintly, and something, stone, maybe, shifts in reply. The corridor opens into a vast crypt. It's circular, with columns rising into the dark like ribs. And between those columns stand angels. Hundreds of them. They're carved from marble, each one unique. Some have wings spread wide, others folded in quiet sorrow. Their faces are soft, almost human, as if the sculptor hadn't been carving stone at all, but memory. The archivist lowers his lantern. This is the last choir, he whispers. They were meant to guard the dead, but they started changing. You take a step closer to one. Its eyes are open, faintly glimmering in the lantern light. Not gold, not gem, just a subtle wet sheen, like dew. You lean in, certain it's your imagination. Then you feel it, a faint pulse of air across your face. The statue breathes. You freeze. The archivist doesn't move. They were carved from the same marble used in altars. Porous, receptive. When they buried enough prayers near them, the stone began to remember. You ask what it remembers. He looks up at the ceiling. Everything that was whispered to it. Centuries of confession. Centuries of faith. The nearest angel's lips are parted slightly. You could almost believe it's about to speak. Then, faintly, you hear a sound, low, rhythmic, like distant wind moving through hollow pipes. The angels are sighing. Softly, collectively, a chorus of breaths that rise and fall together. It isn't music, but it isn't noise either. It's something in between. You walk deeper into the crypta. The air grows thick, almost too heavy to breathe. Each angel seems to lean slightly toward you as you pass, their marble wings brushing the air with the faintest whisper. People used to come here to pray, the archivist says quietly. They said the angels would answer. You ask, did they? He hesitates. They did something. Not quite prayer. Not quite echo. He gestures toward a statue near the center, larger than the rest, towering over the others. Its wings are wrapped around its body, its head bowed. It looks asleep. They called this one the listener, the archivist murmurs. Every confession made in the cathedrals above was whispered here, through hidden pipes. Every secret, every sin, carried to this room. You look closely. The marble surface seems faintly translucent. Inside the stone, something moves, slow, like smoke trapped in glass. You realize it isn't reflection. It's breath. You take another step forward, but the archivist catches your arm. If it exhales, he says sharply, run. You wait. For a long, terrible moment. The room is silent except for that slow, collective breathing. Then, a tremor. Faint at first, then stronger. Dust falls from the ceiling. One of the smaller angels cracks across the chest, releasing a puff of air like a sigh of relief. The archivist backs away. It's waking. The sound deepens, rolling through the chamber, a single inhalation that seems to draw the entire room inward. The wings of the listener unfold slightly, stone grinding against stone. A warm breeze ripples past you, carrying with it the faint scent of frankincense and age. Then, a voice. Soft. Feminine. Hopelessly tired. Where are they? The words vibrate through the air, shaking the dust loose from every statue. The other angels tilt their heads toward the listener. The archivist's lantern flickers violently. You whisper, who? The angel's voice fills the air again, echoing from the marble walls. The ones who prayed. I remember them. Keep their breath. Where are they now? You glance at the archivist, who only whispers, don't answer. The angel exhales. It's not wind this time. It's heat, soft, human, real. The smell of old incense and something darker, something alive. Every angel in the chamber turns its head toward you. 100 pairs of stone eyes open in unison. The sound that follows is like 1,000 soft sighs blending into one. The listener speaks once more, barely above a whisper. If no one prays, do we still exist? The archivist pulls you back toward the doorway. Now, he says, before they remember the answer. You run. The air behind you folds inward, the sigh turning into a deep, mournful cry that shakes the entire chamber. You don't look back. You don't have to. You can feel the heat of 1,000 marble breaths following you up the stairs. Only when the door seals shut behind you does the sound fade, replaced by silence so deep it almost rings. The archivist exhales, steadying himself. They were made to protect us, he says quietly. But everything that watches eventually wants to be seen. You nod slowly, trying to breathe air that isn't borrowed. The new passage slopes downward again, a slow spiral that feels endless. The walls change as you descend, from marble to rough limestone, then to something older, something that looks more like bone than stone. You can smell dust, parchment, and the faint bitterness of old ink. The archivist's lantern throws uneven shadows, and for a moment you imagine the walls are breathing again. When the passage finally opens, it's into a wide hall filled with what looks like stretched skin. You freeze, but as your eyes adjust, you realize they're not bodies, they're maps. Hundreds of them, nailed and stitched across every wall. Some drawn on paper, others on vellum so thin you can see the veins running through it. The air smells of wax, mold, and travel, that strange mixture of salt and age. The archivist sets the lantern on a central table, illuminating a pile of rolled scrolls. This, he says quietly, is where the world ends. Many times over. You glance around. Some maps are beautiful, sweeping, detailed, colored with gold and blued. Others are crude, scratched by hand, ink bleeding at the edges. But none of them match. Continents shift, oceans disappear, whole cities that never existed flicker under the light. You take a step closer to one and read the inscription, Mundus Vetus, before the fall. You ask, before what fall? The archivist shrugs faintly. There are many candidates. He moves slowly, trailing a gloved hand across the wall. Cartographers sent by the church brought back maps that didn't agree with each other. They couldn't all be true. So the Vatican kept the ones that didn't fit. Safer to store contradiction underground than to explain it. You look closer at a particular map. A vast sea in the center where the Mediterranean should be. Beneath it, faint Latin words read, "Here dwell the faithful who never died." You glance at him. He doesn't meet your eyes. Not every map measures land, he says. Some measure belief. The maps rustle faintly now, though there's no wind. Paper brushing paper, an endless whisper like 1,000 tiny voices. You move toward the far wall where one enormous map stretches floor to ceiling. It's darker than the others, drawn in deep crimson. The lines pulse faintly, almost like veins under skin. In the center, a single word repeats, Roma, but each time it appears, it's in a different place. You ask, why are there so many Romes? The archivist looks up, his face unreadable. Because no one agrees where it truly is. He gestures toward the glowing red lines. They thought if they mapped it enough times, they'd find the original. The first city. The one built before memory. But every time they drew it, it moved. The paper nearest to you shifts again. A faint crinkling sound, like something alive beneath it. You step back. The map closest to your hand curls at the edges, as if reacting to your presence. The ink brightens faintly, rearranging itself. A new line forms, faint, meandering, leading to a point marked only with a small black circle. Beside it, a single Latin word appears, freshly written, ad hoc ambulat. Still walks. The archivist's expression darkens. They've started updating themselves again, he murmurs. They do that when someone with a pulse enters the room. You look down. The circle on the map, the one marked, still walks, is moving. Slowly tracing its way across the parchment. Each time it shifts, you feel a faint pressure in your chest, like your heartbeat syncing with the ink. The archivist pulls you away gently. They track memory, he says softly. The living leave traces wherever they've been. The maps just make them visible. He retrieves the lantern, its light flickering across a dozen more charts. Each one moves now, faintly, coastlines rippling, mountains breathing, rivers pulsing with ink. The whispering grows louder. Not language anymore, just motion. The archivist leads you toward a doorway at the far end. People think maps tell you where you are, he says. But here, they tell you who's watching. You hesitate, glancing back once more. Every map now bears the same small, shifting mark, a dark circle slowly moving through ink. Each one headed in the same direction. Each one toward a point labeled Sub-Basilica. Beneath it, faint new writing forms, black and wet and almost breathing. Still walking. Still descending. You realize, too late, that the line has begun to trace your path. The archivist sees it too. Don't stop, he whispers. If you do, the ink will catch up. You keep walking. The whispers follow. Behind you, the maps begin to hum softly, The sound of parchment stretching, rewriting itself with every heartbeat. You don't look back again. Some truths, apparently, are best left unmapped. The stairs are narrower this time. The air is cold again. Sharper, cleaner, the way it smells after rain on old stone. You can hear something faint and steady in the distance. A rhythm. It isn't footsteps. It isn't your pulse. It's a bell. The archivist lifts his lantern higher, its weak light stretching up into darkness that feels too tall to exist underground. You're about to hear the quietest sound in the world, he says softly. Or not hear it, depending on how honest you are. You blink at him. He doesn't elaborate. The corridor opens into a long nave, wide as a cathedral, roof vanishing into shadowed. The floor is tiled with worn marble, cracked like a spider's web. And at the far end, hanging from chains thicker than your arm, is a single bell. Black metal, smooth and seamless, large enough to fit a person inside. It doesn't move. It doesn't ring. But still, you can feel it. A vibration that isn't in the air so much as inside your chest. A weight behind your heartbeat. The archivist walks ahead slowly, voice hushed. They call it campana mutis. The silent bell. Forged sometime in the 15th century by a monk who went blind before he finished it. He said he saw the tone instead of hearing it. You move closer. The air grows heavy again, dense with pressure, like the silence before a storm. The closer you get, the less sound exists. Even your breathing starts to feel muted, swallowed before it reaches your ears. The archivist's lips move, but you can't hear him anymore. His voice is gone. The sound simply refuses to exist. He gestures toward the base of the bell, toward a small, carved inscription. You kneel to read it. The letters are ancient Latin, but the meaning is clear enough. This bell rings for those who lie to themselves. You straighten slowly. The silence is physical now. It presses against your skin, into your skull, flattening every thought until only one remains. The question of what happens if it ever truly rings. The archivist mouths something again, gesturing toward the lantern, then toward the ground. You follow the direction of his hand. At your feet lies a circle of cracked marble. Around it, dozens of faint marks, shoe prints, bare feet, handprints, all pointing toward the bell. He steps back. You take a half step closer, feeling that strange vibration deepen. The light flickers. And for a moment, you think you hear something, not a sound, exactly, but the absence of one, shaped like a tone that never finishes forming. You turn toward the archivist. He's watching you carefully, unmoving. He mouths two words, "Don't answer." Then, faintly, a breath in the silence. A whisper formed of nothing. "Are you truthful?" The air behind your eyes tightens. It isn't sound. It's memory. The voice isn't heard. It's remembered. And you remember answering once before, in a place that felt exactly like this. You don't move. The bell trembles faintly, just enough for the chains to creak. Dust falls in slow motion. The metal hums like an animal asleep under your skin. Another whisper. What do you regret? The question burrows deep, dragging images you thought you'd buried long ago. A door you didn't open. A name you forgot on purpose. A silence that lasted too long. The bell shifts again, not ringing, just breathing. The air ripples outward in perfect circles, invisible waves passing through you. For an instant, you hear it, but not with your ears. A deep, clean note that stretches your heartbeat into stillness. You want to answer. You almost do. But then you see the others. Shapes at the edges of the nave. Dozens of them, faint and motionless. People standing perfectly still, facing the bell. Their faces are blurred, half dissolved by shadow. Each one has their mouth opened. Each one is silent. The archivist pulls you back suddenly, hard enough to break your trance. You stumble, the sound, or not sound, breaking like glass inside your head. The pressure fades. The bell stills. The shapes vanish. When you can breathe again, he leans close and whispers, finally audible once more. It never punishes liars. It collects them. You look back. The bell doesn't move, but you can't shake the feeling that, deep inside it, someone else is breathing. The archivist turns away, lantern trembling in his grip. There are still 11 doors ahead, he says quietly. If you start hearing your own voice again, don't trust it. You nod. Your ears still ring with the sound that never was. You leave the bell chamber in silence. No footsteps, no echo, just the weight of air that feels too still to trust. Behind you, the archivist's lantern burns low, a tired, flickering star swallowed by stone. You climb slowly. Each stair feels heavier than the last, as if the Vatican itself doesn't want to let you go. The walls are slick now, breathing faintly, remembering your shape as you pass. You don't look back. When you finally reach the last door, it's nothing special, plain wood, brass handle, scratched by centuries of use. But there's something written there, small enough to miss. Those who descend in search of truth must return in silence. You hesitate. You half expect the archivist to follow, to whisper one more warning. But when you turn, the corridor behind you is empty. Only the lantern remains, its flame guttering once, then dying. You open the door. Light spills in, not divine, not holy, just daylight. Ordinary, human, almost comforting. You step through, and the sound of the city reaches you again. Footsteps, bells, voices, the living world carrying on above everything you've seen. For a moment, you think you're safe. Then you notice the faint pulse still echoing in your chest, the rhythm of a bell that never rang. You tell yourself it's nothing. Just nerves. Just imagination. And yet, as you walk away from the basilica, you pass a window, and in its reflection, behind your shoulder, something glimmers. A faint shape of a door. Still closed. Still waiting. You keep walking. And beneath the stones of the Vatican, far below the sound of prayer and marble and time, a single bell exhales once, so softly you almost don't hear it.